All right, I'm going live, folks. All right, I'm going live. I'm going live for this here video. Hold on. See, this is a live show. It's it's called a Memorial Day for Peace Officers, especially all of law enforcement, especially law enforcement, especially police officers, which you have to respect and admire. All I do is I think what I can do. I can salute these guys for what they have done, even though that's what I had to do is make this thing about them. But I press no, it's not for kids because it's already adult oriented. So shit, you can't even make none. You can't even get nothing better than that. Uh, with this live stream here, one thing, but especially those police officers, they can get the respect that they want. So I don't. In other words, that in my opinion, who who gives a fuck? So I'm doing this. I'm doing this. This is a stream that I had to do. This is it's before the ninth anniversary of the death of my great aunt Leola Alexander. Uh, the late Leola Alexander. Well, Hall is her middle and maiden name. So she knew me through she knew me through my late grandmother Geraldine Alexander Coleman. Okay. See, my late grandmother, Jolene Coleman, her husband was my grandfather, Edward Coleman Jr. They've been married for years, so this is years before the separation. So tomorrow I'm gonna have to do this stream. I'm gonna have to go do this stream again, but I gotta do this stream before tomorrow's live stream. I gotta do this. I gotta do this stream. That's about the Memorial Day for peace officers, especially it's for them because it works so goddamn hard to fucking put all the extra work in to protect and serve the communities that they protect and serve. You know, they protect and serve communities because they're dedicated into protecting the communities that already uh, that could be considered safe, even though it wasn't safe, even when there's violence, where there's violence, there's people getting shot and killed. More got citizens getting killed. More citizens getting killed. Men, women, teenagers, children. They end up getting killed by stray bullets. You know, stray bullets. But this is something you got to look at, even though in the 80s, it goes back to 40 years ago when my cousin Margaret Stevenson was murdered. She was killed. She was pregnant. She was murdered while she was pregnant with an unborn child of hers in her stomach. And even though I can only tell from the moment of all the shit that happened, it goes back to I was like 6 months old when when Margaret got killed. Well, 6 months old when Margaret got killed. Margaret Stevenson was a cousin of my grandmother, the late Esther May Calloway Shaw. My grandmother knew her. She was My grandmother was like cousins with her with Margaret, same time, same as my other cousin, the late Marion Stevenson. The other one who was already alive was had to be Joyce. Joyce had already knew me while I was in diapers. She knew me ever since I was in diapers, man. A lot of people died, and then you got more people died all at like fucking 86, 87. You know, you got more deaths of people that was gone. That more people that was not even here. Uh, Kelvin Darnell Martin, the real 50 Cent from Brooklyn, New York. He was murdered in New York. Another person who got murdered is Scott LaRock of Boogie Down Productions. He was murdered while he's trying to defuse a street beef. He had diffused a street beef that's been going between two people. Like I don't know if it's rappers or some street cats that he trying to defuse the beef that's happened between those two people. He ain't got shot and gunned down, killed, execution style. Months after Boogie Down Productions released the album Criminal Minded, two people that was that was that was on the cover of a Criminal Minded album was a young Chris Parker, he's Karis One, and a young Scott Rock. But '86 it was like MC battle between Boogie Down Productions and the Juice Crew. This all the beef, it was finished and done until 1987 when he dropped Criminal Minded. After they dropped Criminal Minded, Skyrock was killed. We'll move on with this one. See, it happened with people that's no longer along with these people that's no longer here. These two women I consider great aunties of mine. Their names are Esther Celestine and Jeanette West. They both died. Among all those people, among among those other two, Kelvin Darnell Martin, Scott Rock. Fell in that category. That 1987 time when I didn't get a chance to write down my composition on the page of my composition book. I forgot all about that. But the thing with the murders, you have people that's been gone. Well, long before that, there's people that's been gone. Dwayne Douglas Johnson's grandfather, Peter Maivia, passed away. He passed away 40 years ago. He was a good wrestler. All mixed with and with Easy, met Dr. Dre and Cali, and you got shit that's going on. Jim Belushi, not Jim Belushi, the death of John Belushi. You have shit going on with the and everything else going on in the music. The thing is not even considered to be a thing in the world. See, it's all led to people in this music. Music could be the only avenue that could be a way out for rappers to do their job. They go do their goddamn job and they'll fucking get up off their ass and rap. Now we gotta go through all this shit, 1988. So all this happened, and then they have Cesar Romero's death. R.I.P. to Cesar Romero. He's the guy who played the Joker character. I remember so much. He used to play that character on the old 1960s Batman TV series. It used to be on the Family Channel, but now it's but they got that show sent all the way to the memorable entertainment television network. So they'll do it on the weekends. So, but rest in peace to Adam West, uh, born William West Anderson. He was a great actor behind the Bruce Wayne slash Batman character. So sometimes you gotta pay homage to the guy who gets all the credit for playing the character. So you got to do it. So 1989, you got shit going on. You got, I mean, this part. 1988, I was about to be enrolled in elementary school in that minute, in that time period. But that was part of time I was in kindergarten. I did not know it was like September of '88, whatever. But I didn't want you to get there in '88. I was like in way in 1989. You have all this shit going on. Then some individual ended up being found dead in some abandoned apartment in I was under construction in Colorado. And Colorado Springs PD had already found this individual that was dead under all this rubble. But you got all this shit you got on. You got this goes after 1988 when Tupac Shakur was was in a rap group called Strictly Dope. He was like 17 at the time. It was him. It was him, DJ Diz, who was uh who was working with him on this Case of Misplaced Mike song. There's Capital B, who had to be Byron, uh, Pookie, um, there's Ray Love that Tupac was friends with in Marin City, California. Um, And the last person who's no longer here, no longer around, is Mike Cooley. Mike Cooley was Tupac's friend in Strictly Dope. That's why he he's no longer there. He's no longer around, and that's what Strictly Dope happened in 1988. But this is the same year Tupac Shakur had this interview. I think it's a high school like interview that that was courtesy of James Kavanaugh. James Kavanaugh was the guy who had did the interview. Wish I would watch that interview again. I swear to fucking God, I would see that interview. But you can only see an interview for yourself. If you look at the interview, you'll find more of it. You'll find more of that interview if you look at it. But it's excellent to all the interviews that already been shown. But then long and behold, in 1989, Strictly Dope was they were riding high in 88 and 89. And then they worked on that Case of Misplaced Mike's song, and then Pac to him like, I was like, oh, my mic was missing, call Dizzy. So he got home, he looking for that missing microphone and all that shit. And that goes back to early 1989 when he did a song with, I think it was with he did a song called Case of Misplaced Mike. I think he did two versions of it. They had the original version and they got a different version of it. So this is before Strictly Dope started breaking up. It's before Strictly Dope started breaking up at the period. When they split up, I think but first of all, it's around time back in '88, and it goes back to Lela Steinberg. She used to be a school teacher in Bayside Elementary school, but this is before she was known to start managing artists, poets, and especially poets and rappers, rappers, what you call them. And Ray Love was about to pursue his rap career, and you get to see why he pursued his rap career. He pursued his rap career, and then this is around the time Strictly Dope was formed. But early '89, that group was getting ready to break up. But always, and then that's after they did a couple songs like this, "Me the Moocher," "Panther Power." It sounds like "Me the Moocher." I think "Panther Power." I think it was "Me the Moocher," "Panther Power," and some songs. Uh, and some songs they used. So, but those songs were already, but 1 of 10 of those songs, 11 of those songs, 1 of 10 of those songs were already lost in the shuffle. You know, those songs were already been recorded in 1988, and they got played in 1989. So that's when they broke up, and Pac went solo. So he went so later, like all the way to August of '89. Uh, this is after he turned 18, June 16th of that year. or to like August of '89, uh, Will Steinberg took Tupac to the studio to she took him there to meet with Adrian Gregory, who was like who was like his second manager. And it was and this and Gregory was known for managing the underground. It was Shock G or Money B, still alive. Uh, Chop Master J or whatever his name is. Uh, Money B's brother used to be in the group anyway, so they replaced Money B's brother with Tupac. He was like 17 or 18 years old. So so it was like a contract agreement. It was with Leila Steinberg, Adrian Gregory, and 18-year old Tupac Shakur. Well, everybody knows Tupac Shakur's real name was Lassane Parish Crooks. So Tupac Shakur is a given name. Well, Tupac Amaru Shakur was like a given name, but nobody else even know he was named after uh, Tupac Amaru the Fourth, who was like a Peruvian revolutionary. And there's more things we had to see for there. Uh, it's all led to one of his heroes, Huey Percy Newton. He was in jail from when the since back from the '60s all the way to the '70s, all the way to the '80s. He was locked down. It was righteous Panther shit. This righteous fucking Black Panther shit. Crimes he would have done, but later in '89 they let him go. They released him. So he went on a talk show. Newton went on the talk show, even though Huey Newton he knew Tupac Shakur's mother, Afeni Shakur. Him and Afeni were like friends. They both know like best friends. There's a lot of people that's been in the Black Panthers, and one of those guys, a few of these guys who started this Black Panther shit was I think it was Robert Seals and another guy who goes by the name of Elmer Pratt. They call him Geronimo. There's a part of it. Elmer Geronimo Pratt was let go, and then they was released from prison. Huey Percy Newton was let go and released from prison. But after the talk show, Newton was back in Oakland, California. He was trying to he was trying to find some drugs. He was trying to get some drugs, you know what I mean? And look what happened. He was gunned down, execution style, in Oakland, California. And then he was found dead by somebody, and then somebody, then a fellow resident that lives in Oakland, California, found Newton dead. They called Oakland PD. So, and they see life was Huey Newton. No, they no need for my help. No, there's no need for my help. No need for that. Huey Newton was murdered. He was killed. Execution style in Oakland, California. Oakland PD They about to put him in the body. They put Huey in the body bag. And also, he was shot in the. And they found out he was shot in the head. Yeah, with two. He got hit with two shots. Somebody hit him. He shot him with two shots. So Newton was pronounced dead. Streets of Oakland, uh, California. So the only thing they do about Huey was a revolutionary man, and then he he um he ruled the Panthers with an iron fist back in 1966. Him and Robert Seals, they ruled that organization with an iron fist, and that's the reason they've been around. They've been in that they've been running that organization right ever since my mother was born. But that's one thing that crippled the Black Panthers is Huey Newton ended up dead in Oakland, California. Then a few weeks later, the funeral of Huey Percy Newton was planned at church. But he be resting in peace though, because he's one of those heroes that you could that a child could worship. But he's no longer with us. But Dr. Mutua Shakur was Tupac Shakur's stepfather, and he's the father of Tupac Shakur's stepbrother, Mopreme Shakur. He was on the run 41 years ago on an armored car robbery. The feds were looking for him. And then later he got locked down like 86, 87. Like, he was locked down. And they got the and he went to the old laws like he took the L like leniency. So, but some sooner or later he'll be out. He'll be out of prison somehow. They gonna have to let him out. Let that man go, man. The guy's a spirit. The guy's a healer. Let that man go. Free Dr. Matul Shakur, man. Free Dr. Matul Shakur, man. He's he's like a great spiritual healer. You know what I mean? Let him go. Free him. Fuck it. Free Marion Hugh Knight Jr., aka Suge. I'm at the end. I'm at the see what I can let me go show this thing right quick. Let me go get that. Let me get to this thing. Okay, we gotta. Okay, I'm about to switch some gears here. This is what I'm gonna play this during this stream. I ain't gonna be able to eat and drink anything else tonight. I'm gonna enjoy this documentary. It's called Tupac Assassination Battle for Compton. It's part of real stories.
I don't think I knew that documentaries could be told like this, with so many of the traits of drama. Again, I don't know if I noticed it at the time, but I've noticed it again watching it recently.
You know what? We're on fucking one then. Let me see if I can go find this shit. Something wrong with this thing. On. Let's get it started, folks. All right, Tupac assassination, battle for Compton. Rest in peace to Frank Alexander, Michael Moore, uh, Russell Poole, Kevin Gaines. Let's get this shit started, will ya? Fuck the technical note. Go ahead, play, please. Where's the technical note? It's off. Let me push this back so I can watch this shit.
Controversial rapper and actor Tupac Shakur has died in a Las Vegas hospital.
Rap star Biggie Smalls, the notorious B.I.G., was shot dead by a drive-by gunman.
Someone had had enough of seeing this, and there was an anonymous letter sent to law enforcement saying these guys are living like drug dealers.
Yo can't wait till he's just gone for good, so they can fully breathe a sigh of relief.
He's dead. That person's dead. And everybody feels comfortable with the fact of that. When I say everybody, I mean whoever set it up.
They're not going to rest.
Oh yeah,
until
rest in
Suge
peace to
Knight
Timothy
is
Brennan
dead or
too.
in jail.
It was a setup.
Here's a setup. Martin Productions presents the Key PSI. Present a Richard Bond, Michael Douglas Coleman film. Based on the books Tupac 187 and Chaos Merchants. Tupac assassination, battle for Compton. Also based on the work in the memory of Detective Russell Poole. And inspired by the movies American Federale and Tupac Assassination. Written by Michael Douglas Cullen and Richard R.J. Bond. Edited by Richard R.J. Bond. Executive producers Richard R.J. Bond and Michael Douglas Cullen. Associate producers Jesse Surratt and Casey Lee. Directed by Richard Bond and Michael Douglas Cullen. Alright, we'll get it started too. Let's get started with this film too. This film.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
Yes, Tupac Amaru Shakur.
Tupac Amaru Shakur is one of the greatest rap artists in history of the genre.
I started off
June 28, 1995, he was at the police station in the East Coast.
And poets I saw were like,
And it was back around 9:57 a.m. in the morning.
But then I started turning to poetry into songs.
From the moment that I met Tupac,
And this interview with Lela
at the age
Steinberg.
of 17, he was one of the most startling individuals I've ever met. He was, and still is, just one of the most amazing voices. I love Pac instantly.
You do.
It's how you raised.
Oh, the interview with Aunt Glow.
Barricaded. Although
Gloria
the
Cox.
FBI was always
Tupac's
lurking
aunt
around
and
all of
sister.
that, but you still went about your business. The kids still played outside.
The lady
When
who
they
was
came
featured,
upstairs,
she was in the picture at the Mother's Day banquet in
The
'96.
door
Remember
was
her?
your police bar in New York, and your little lock. But you weren't standing at the window with guns. That's not what his life was. It may have been others, but it wasn't his.
He became like my little brother.
Oh yeah,
and
Tracy
I work with
Robinson,
many different artists,
who's one of
but
Tupac
he's the
Shakur's
guy
video
who invites you
producers,
to
and
your
one of his
home,
business partners.
Who you talk to, late at night. Who's just very easy to know for me. I kind of feel like he was that way with many more people, which is why he's so missed. Because when people met him,
he was that way with everybody,
they
man.
really
Outlaws,
got a chance to get a piece of him.
Months and months, I kept talking about needing a young artist that had a voice.
Lela Steinberg has known Tupac Shakur ever since. Lela have known Tupac Shakur ever since she was like 17.
Plenty of days a night, the brother. He kept the smile on his face.
Napoleon Bill.
He was one of them guys that
one
had
of the members of the
He
Outlaws.
wasn't always
But the guy just still Muslim. He was one dude. He wasn't nothing to do being in the rap game.
Things like that, facing the worst things in his world.
He's one turned Muslim.
On his face. He always, he always
Valentino hated him.
It is in my opinion that I was rapping while I was writing poetry. Okay, and so I was into rap.
9:58 a.m.
From junior high, when I spent my first poem.
I fought a lot of people around me because Pac, when he was so young, he was already a contradiction in so many ways, externally and internally, and he lived out loud. So nothing surprised me. He was so in your face.
Pac really down to earth. He was a good dude. He had good intentions. You know what I mean? It's just that, unfortunately, sometimes in the streets, it can mislead us and have us going the wrong way.
A lot of people nowadays like to say Tupac was
Tupac's
loyal.
manager since
But
Adrian
Tupac
Gregory.
was really only
It's
loyal
Tupac's second manager.
He was
from early
he was
on.
loyal to what he wanted.
What my and Pac's friendship and love was about making shit happen.
If you could ride with that,
and he
was fine with it. But if it was something that you couldn't ride with, he would move on. Or you did something he didn't like, or if you didn't give him the attention that he thought he needed at that particular time, he was done with you. He might just be done with you for the night, but he was done with you at least for that night. And then he may reconsider the next morning, and you guys will be fine. But that's just how Tupac was.
Duh.
And after I heard on the radio
Pocket spoke on it in his interview.
Who made records and it was still sound.
He's looking for poets.
And I decided to change the method of my poetry.
Tupac Shakur was shot to death just 1 year after this deposition, the deposition that he had of him. Like many others, his death was collateral damage. UMC Las Vegas, Nevada, location of Tupac Shakur's death.
We had Los Angeles police officers
story we were about to see.
Compton police officers working with inside the organization. Their badges stopped us from getting to the truth.
No one is above the law. This is a fundamental principle.
The 2015 indictment of Los Angeles County Sheriff
and
Lee
when it is
Baca.
violated, it's the job of the Department of Justice to step in and hold individuals accountable.
The 51-year-old deputy chief
2015 indictment of Fresno, California Deputy Chief of Police.
In particular, oxycodone, heroin, and marijuana.
In a 3-year investigation,
2014 indictment of 5 San Francisco officers for stealing money and drugs.
Assignment taken off of any street. Certain officers, because of the
seriousness of the allegation were disarmed.
And unfortunately, this
Drug Enforcement Agent Jack Riley.
3 police officers who were sworn to uphold public safety off the street. From my point of view, I'm battling the Mexican cartels in Chicago. Now I got to worry about this.
Corruption comes up through Mexico. I think it was 1987 in Mexico. And this guy, he had to be a federale. His name was protected. His federale name was Lobo. That's right, Lobo.
I just enjoyed the fringe benefits that came with a credential. Nightlife, the party life, the rubbing elbows with the powerful Juarez and Chihuahua.
And this man was the Mexican federale famous for killing Pablo Acosta, who happened to be a drug lord in Mexico. But it didn't matter.
When I was with the feds, there was this, one guy. This happened after the Pablo Acosta incident.
Yeah.
We were doing a job. One of the other agents had a case and we were called in to help him. And we went into his house, real nice house. I turned around, there's a bag, a paper bag, grocery bag. And I look into it and there was piles of money.
Oh, yeah.
And inside that same bag was many bags of ounces of cocaine.
They know it's dope. They know there's some dope in there, in that bags.
But that wasn't my, that wasn't my thing. It was share alike. So I gave that money to.
That's the same guy you gave the money to, stole it from you, bro.
Some other were sand racking, taking everything. They were stealing everything. And the person I gave the money to stole the money.
Yeah.
He never reported it. So I came back home that night. I get a knock. And I walk out and it was two of the commandant's right hands.
The commandants are coming to get you, Lobo.
They turned around.
They're going to kidnap you, man.
It was torture. The same thing we did to the criminals was done to me.
It was done to you anyway.
And the one pointing the finger, blaming me.
They're torturing and giving you the water and some pepper treatment.
From the house.
They hit with the water and pepper treatment. They'll interrogate you for days. They'll fuck your face up.
They bounded
with the water and pepper treatment. They'll line your ass up.
Give me water shocks. When they started beating me up, the commander was.
Water shocks refers to torture.
Working in Mexico. That was the only time I had that problem.
What is used to conduct electricity to shock the genitals and the heart?
The first night I went in there, they asked me, "Where's the money?" I gave the money to him.
Victims rarely survive.
And since he was a commander's right hand, he believed him more than me. So he took me into his office.
Yeah, he took you in the office.
They handcuffed my hands.
Oh, he handcuffed you.
They tied my legs. They put me on the ground.
Oh, they tied you up.
They shoved the rag up my mouth.
Hey, they smelled you with the rag.
Handkerchief on my face.
Yeah, they put it on your face.
And they gave me the water treatment.
And they gave water treatment. They gave water treatment to you, Lobo.
Pepper powder.
They gonna know you stole them. You gonna know you got that idiot stole the money from you.
Gave $20,000 to them. They called me. They pulled me out of the cell.
They pulled you out.
And they took me into an office. The commander turned around and he cursed at me for a while.
He cursed at you anyway. He said, he cursed you. Yeah, Lobo, he cursed you. Yeah, Lobo, the commandants go curse you. Lobo just went, the commandants went cursing you. He probably went to you, fuck you.
I had beer. My hair was all messed up. I remember crossing the bridge and the guy at the port of entry just looked at me. Are you okay?
They know you'll be all right, Lobo. Shit. There's the Operation Big Spender thing that they're looking at. Though throughout the years,
the cocaine trade
Thomas
had sort of shifted from Miami
was around talking about
because a lot of the law enforcement there to Los Angeles.
It's Thomas
As
Bino
the volume of cocaine cases and frankly the volume of cocaine per case started to grow and grow, the sheriff's department selected some of their best narcotics officers to be what they called their majors crews to go after the big, significant, large-scale narcotics distributors. The majors units at the LA Sheriff's Department were Majors 1,
the narco
Majors
unit,
2, Majors 3, and Majors 4.
Four majors at the narco unit
to discover
in LA.
and ferret out
David Shepard knows.
corruption by elite law
He used to be a
enforcement
prosecutor
officers.
for the
It
big
started
spender
because
shit.
some of these sheriff's deputies who were putting their lives on the line every day, as they would seize money, they
That's why
at
the
some
Memorial
point came
Day
up with
is
the idea of taking a little bit of the money
it's
to
already
try to
built
get better
for the
equipment
peace
to help
officers,
them do
all
their
the
jobs.
cops.
Over time, it morphed into
And the
maybe
sheriff and
people
other
were
law
going to lunch
enforcement
that
also
day from the
received
unit, so they
money
would take
from
some of the money
asset
from the kitty,
forfeiture.
as they called it, and they'd use it for lunch. And then
Why
a
use
little
that
later
for
on,
lunch?
it
You
might
get
be the
you gonna get
weekend,
wrong
and
with the
they were all
kitty?
going out, and
What the
it's
fuck?
like,
What the fuck you gonna do?
hey,
What
let's
the fuck
take
you
a
do?
little money from the kitty for when we go out.
The fuck you gonna do? Try to go see hand the kitty, go get the money, go get
We
lunch.
have $1 million in cash in 5s, 10s, and 20s spread through all of our desks. They wouldn't let us use the money counter, so
Steve
we
Moore
had to do it by
knows.
hand.
Steve
We
Moore
ordered
knows.
pizza, and so we're all digging in our
I see more.
pockets,
Steve
trying to
Strong.
come up with
Steve
enough
Strong knows.
to pay the
He
pizza
used to
guy,
be
and he's looking
an
at us like
LAPD gang
we're
narcotics
crazy because
detective.
here's $1 million spread out all over these tables.
And then
LA
before
County
you know
Sheriff's
it, as
Narcotics
time
Unit said
progresses on,
1
and
million
certainly by the time of the
stolen.
majors teams, forget the kitty. When we seize money, let's just take some. The predication
Why dudes had to go get
came
lunch?
from drug dealers.
Later on, we find out that not only
Ex-drug
had
dealer Ricky
they
Ross,
been
he'll
planting
start
drugs
talking about
on
what's
my
going to
guys,
happen.
but they had been planting drugs
He
and
feel he doesn't like
lying on the witness
he feel he
stand
doesn't like being
and
broke all the time.
fabricating
He doesn't like
search warrants
when
for a lot
when
of
people
other
start
people.
telling him that
Drug
people
dealers
telling that his mama lights getting ready to cut
came
off, whatever.
forward and spoke to officials and created a buzz where
Ricky doesn't
similar,
like
if not identical,
having an empty
scenarios
refrigerator.
of,
He doesn't like
hey,
he
I don't,
doesn't like
it's all the same to me.
he doesn't like
But just so you know,
being
they
penniless and
reported
broke. Rick does not like that
$50,000
when people
me.
started telling
I had
started talking about
$100,000
they go
Basically took away the gang
Ricky Ross mama lights
thing and
off and all
became
that at her house.
people that had organizations and like Whitey's World, the Way Out World, the World on
I mean, I
Wheels,
swear to
Cobra
God,
Enterprises.
Ricky Ross.
These are
We
all
Ricky Ross.
African-American
I
gang
already
members
posted and talked
that
about that.
had narcotic organizations that made millions of dollars.
Bunch of my guys have been getting drugs planted on them when they didn't have no drugs.
All of a sudden,
and they
few
wasn't selling
Ricky's
drugs.
guys got tricked.
And I wanted to find out who these cops were that was doing this.
Ricky Ross was a legendary drug dealer.
Yeah,
but so were a lot of people in LA.
He used to be a
They
drug
was
dealer.
taking drugs from one person, planting them on another person, and
They doing the
selling them to
plants.
this person, and just criminal enterprise.
The cops planted drugs on
invisibly
fucking people that they ain't doing no
But
drugs
sometimes
no
it
more.
happened right out in the open, where a seeming confidence had developed among the detectives. Nobody's going to believe this person. At some point in
They try to call that person a liar.
someone had had enough of seeing this, and there was an anonymous letter sent to law enforcement saying, these guys are living like drug dealers. You need to check them out. They're spending money like drug dealers. They have money like drug dealers, and they're living the life of drug dealers. That led to a lengthy and exhaustive investigation culminating in a sting where they actually had a wired up, videoed up hotel room.
Operation Big Spender sting locations.
Alleged
That was
drug
at the
money.
Warner Center Marriott
Yeah,
at the Valley
1989.
Hilton.
And they actually caught
you got the
members
July
of the
1989
Majors
videotape.
Sheriff's
7th floor hallway in Cali.
Stealing money. Thieves doing the thieving live before your eyes.
That's the thievery there.
Yeah, taking a 20, nobody had ever known, but it was something that, in me, that I would have never been able to sleep. I would have been waiting for them to come and knock on my door and take me away for taking $20 from a dirtbag dope dealer with $1 million.
The sergeant on that crew, a guy
El Diablo the Devil was Robert Bob
Sobel's
Sobel's right nickname.
Or cooperating, and that he
Thomas
testified in
Pino
the first
Jr.
trial.
knows.
And because of the information he gave and
Newspaper
later others,
clippings.
the investigation spread
Robert
to the
Sobel.
other major narcotics crews. You didn't have to do very much persuasion that there was something rotten here, because you can see it.
There's always something
as
rotten.
well as study financial records. You could see thievery occur.
They see it occurring for thievery. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Back to the movie. The corruption problem in Compton.
On the one one hand, you have Operation Big Spender and the Los Angeles County Sheriff being prosecuted, and on the other side of the fence, you have the city of Compton.
Of course, it's not uncommon.
All the stars there.
A large city,
all
a
the
medium
majors,
city,
man.
or a relatively small
city called Compton,
like Compton, with a population of approximately 100,000, and you're going to be able to identify
very familiar
its
with
historical
corruption.
record. There was corruption.
There were no lines that people with power in Compton were unwilling to cross to defend their power. No legal lines, no moral lines, no ethical lines. I just found that it was the Wild West.
Virtually every town that has a 19th century origins in Southern California started out as small agricultural colonies. But Compton was unique in that it was early on the settlers decided to incorporate. Los Angeles at the turn of the century is an emerging city. It's still not even in the top 100 cities in the United States in terms of population, but it's on the make. And just south of Compton is Long Beach. These families have been here.
Omar Bradley, exonerated former mayor of Compton, California.
So everyone knows everyone.
Everybody remember him?
You know, if you got caught breaking into somebody's house,
he's the guy who allowed Eazy-E's videos, real motherfucking G's,
in the neighborhood,
to be filmed in that
if you were from
town.
outside of the neighborhood, they're going to check you out.
Like 1993, September 93.
So for African Americans coming from South Central Los Angeles,
the video
with
for to be shown.
Congested and deteriorated housing, for those middle class African Americans, they view Compton as Nirvana. And whites are moving inbound so quickly, I refer to it rather than white flight as white exodus. By 1970, Compton is an African-American majority community, and
white people took their business with them.
The first community this side of the Mississippi River entirely run politically and administratively by African-Americans.
White people took their business. White people took their businesses with them, though.
Be it Crip or Paru, but if they see my
even though the African Americans can be living there in Compton.
Through the 70s and 80s and 90s enters a really trying, challenging, difficult era. You had whites move out, and they took their businesses with them.
Yeah.
So the tax base, with all of the banks gone, in fact, downtown Compton is bulldozed. As that happens,
they bulldoze that shit.
The infrastructure of the city begins to decline. Now, these rough streets are because I'm no longer mayor. Now, you introduce a cheap drug, crack cocaine, that with a rudimentary gang structure, that if it expands and becomes business-oriented in an underground economy, can make a hell of a lot of money.
I was captain fucking football team, AB
student, from above the law.
Shit, we out there getting it. Fuck with this nigga. My brother, so
they just sees 20 tons of cocaine in raid on LA warehouse.
I ain't have no problem. 450 SL in the 10th grade.
And for kids that can't find jobs otherwise, and schools that are deteriorating, they're having trouble staying in schools, you can make quick money, a lot of money, if you do.
There's always problems with
selling of drugs connected to gangs.
I sold drugs because I was running from poverty. I didn't like being poor and broke. You know, I didn't like not having food in the refrigerator. I didn't like for the light man to be talking about cutting my mom's lights off.
Yeah. The birth of Death Row Records.
Individual.
Russell
he had
Poole,
connections with the Compton
the ex-LAPD homicide investigator.
Just about the entire gang.
Death Row Records.
Death Row Records.
Death Row.
Death Row.
Death Row Records.
Death Row.
Death Row.
Death Row Records.
This is Michael Harris, a man drug agents describe as a major cocaine
out of jail.
Yeah, I know Michael Harris.
Harry O's been out of jail.
Yeah, he was trying to put together his wife's album, and
but
we were studies at the time.
But Harry O and Lydia are not even together anymore. They divorced.
Names him as an equal partner in Death Row.
I told you that he could have Dr. Dre produce a song for him.
Death Row Records. Michael and Lydia Harris claimed they invested $1.5 million in Death Row Records.
I met Suge in MDC.
Men's Detention Center.
Harris's
David Kennard at Snoop Dogg murder trial.
Criminal defense attorney David Kennard as the company general counsel and organizer.
Harry O and a couple other guys.
He was with DR publicist Papa G. George Price.
You hired David Kennard and they get a kickback. I was there when he first told Kenner about the music business.
David Kenner left
Harry
work
told
with
David
Suge
Kenner
Knight,
that he
in my
was making more
opinion,
money.
damn near ran the company, said Reggie
White.
White Jr. from June 2011. That's 11 years later.
What's up, boy? What's going on, homie? Doing a documentary.
Corruption.
What corruption? What kind of corruption look like?
Prominent
right
political figures were identified.
Ladies,
often with a federal investigation of corruption on a variety of charges. You had some high-ranking people like U.S. Representative
Tucker, was a former
taking some
deputy
bribes
DA.
from a company.
His term as mayor was plagued by allegations of corruption.
Come into Compton,
and as was fellow prosecutor turned Compton
and the FBI
mayor.
investigated, and then over a course of time, found guilty.
The city council meet in August.
SoCal Connected with Eric
And yet our
Peridin,
producer found that you were being
who
paid
used to be
in
a
August.
Compton mayor.
Probably so.
Why so?
Tradition.
Just to be honest, I was really
It has
naive.
been awesome
I
with
worked
former
in
president, former
politics
first lady,
at a lot
Bill
of
Hillary
different
Clinton.
levels. I have worked in the White House.
You
I've
still,
worked on
Ben.
5 presidential campaigns. I'd been a deputy mayor. I'd been on State Board of Education.
Yeah, you're no longer a
worked on
deputy
number
mayor.
of
You're
mayoral
retired.
campaigns and gubernatorial campaigns. I had never encountered politics like I encountered in Compton.
Ben Austin worked in the White House, so
He's
he's seen
sworn in as a
politics of
deputy
all
mayor.
kinds. They've got to be pretty bad.
Richard
Our
Bond will
research
know.
shows in 2012, the city council members earned $39,000 each for serving on 4 commissions,
That came from
which
what?
met
March of
for a
what? 9
total of
years later?
26 hours. That shakes out to $1,500 per hour.
Compton was just the Wild West, and there were simply no rules. There were
Like
no
those kids are not going to
lines
make it. Said that lady.
people of
Said
power
that
in
that
Compton
lady
were
at
unwilling to cross
the
to defend their
meeting.
power.
Like
No
at the
legal lines,
CUSD
no moral
meeting.
lines, no ethical lines. I just found that it was the Wild West.
What commissions are you
Well,
on?
Bobby, those kids are not going to make it. Or all kids are not going to make it. I think it was said. I think it was said by. I think it was said by that lady who was at the. That was at the Compton school district.
It was CRA.
Compton Public School
It
District.
was public finance. You talking about?
In
Lloyd
nearby
Dobson,
Huntington Park, council
former
members
Compton
make less
councilwoman,
than
alleged to have
$15,000
given
a
city
year.
contracts to
Over in
campaign
Maywood, the
contributors,
politicians there
which
make
lead to
about
4 recall
$6,700
campaigns.
a year. And in affluent Huntington Beach, council members earn about $16,000.
And the rules of engagement, the normal rules of engagement, do not apply.
Do they do anything?
Well, they listen to the audience comments, and then they may comment on that.
There's one.
And then they decide something?
It's just there's
Another interview.
So the people that came into power hired their
Corruption
cousins
spread
and their
schools,
uncles
police
and
in
others
city.
into the jobs, especially in the school district,
Compton
right,
Unified
which
School
was the
District, I know.
largest employer for city residents. But in
Those
1993,
teachers go
state
cause
done
these
something
fucking kids to
unprecedented.
piss themselves in
State had
their
never
pants
done
and
that before.
underwear.
School board president announced during a debate about this that
Teachers won't even let them kids go to the
we just need
bathroom.
to accept that all children are not going to succeed.
All kids are not going to make it.
Yep.
That's just the opening salvo. That was their basic premise from which they were operating, and everything else
All kids are
flows
not
from
going
there.
to make it.
And the board, sometimes we don't even know what's going on.
I mean, the words that were spoken in Compton.
I gave you your 5 minutes. There will be no
Oh,
more speaking.
it's a voice of May Thomas, folks.
In my mind, in an alternate universe, and like I said, I had come there having worked in the White House and on 5 presidential campaigns.
All kids are not going to make it.
Yeah.
And I had never seen anything like
That's
this.
2 of them. That's 2.
Adult issues are important.
So you have in that period of the late 80s to the late 90s this mountain of scandals in the school district, in City Hall, in the representatives that
Don't forget what happened with Bruce Brody. He got stabbed. He got stabbed at a show, at a wrestling show.
Saw across the hall former
Puerto
superintendent
Rico.
of Compton. He just happened to be there. I remember
1988, man.
he turns to me and he says, "You're a crazy motherfucker." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?"
Bill Barely called the state takeover Compton schools a legal occupation.
The mayor called me one day and said that I needed to sell a parcel of land to a developer friend of his. And he said, that he refused, that he wasn't going to do it. So soon after that, a school
More
caught on
fires,
fire.
man.
And a couple of days, a week later, another school catches on fire. And then it happens again. And so he called the fire chief, or the police chief. I don't remember which. And he said, when is this going to stop? What's going on here? We got a huge problem. And he said, the fires will stop when the mayor says the fires will stop. They were essentially doing this eyes wide open. They'd done a report on themselves. They learned that the schools were not performing well because of affirmative decisions they were making and didn't make any changes. And that was, for me, a real poster child for an educational system that is fundamentally designed to serve the needs of adults, not the needs of children.
School operations are important. Kids in McKinley are 50 times more likely to drop out of school than to go to college. I mean, that's a huge concern, and especially for these parents that want their kids to succeed like any parent does. And so the first thing, they want to get their kids out of this school district.
I founded an organization called Parent Revolution, and we invented a new law called the Parent Trigger Law. The law says that if half the parents at a failing school sign a petition, they can bring in new staff, they can bring in new leadership, they can convert their school to a charter school, or they can use the law as leverage to bargain. But it wasn't until we turned the petitions in on December 7th that the blowback really began. They mapped
They directed that film.
Networks of the school and
there's a parent
trigger. Children of the parents.
There's a parent trigger that's caused problems between all of them.
And for the children of the parents who signed the petition,
that's a parent trigger.
Elementary school kids. They wouldn't let the children when they were at school.
Yeah, I talked about this shit.
And they forced the children to pee in their pants.
Yeah.
And when they did, they were sent to the nurse's office.
The nurse would have to take care of that for them kids,
so man. The nurse would call in the mom to bring clean underwear in. And as the mom was changing their child's underwear, the nurse would ask
parents do that, though.
A rescission petition.
And I just want to spread again. When city schools, and then you got to get the Compton Police Department involved. Oh, they're making it better. It says 1888. There's some missing drug evidence involved in the Compton Police Department. That's in California.
And now we see that the corruption that's passed from the city government and the corruption
Compton government, Compton schools,
is now passing its way down
Compton
to the
Police Department.
Compton Police Department. But you have to ask yourself this question. The entire Compton Police Department is
PD. County deputies to assume patrols.
In order to disband an entire police department, things have to be so bad and so corrupt that there's no other alternative, such as maybe bringing in a new police chief, new police administration, or something of that nature.
Back to Omar Bradley.
I used to get on the radio and laugh because they couldn't figure out my phone.
It has happened on occasion where the entire municipality has been dissolved. The bottom line is things have to be pretty bad before that happens.
I had personal interaction with
them. I gotta go do a 2 hours
now. The gang detail from 84
Compton,
to
the Hub 90. City Police.
We didn't share a lot of information with them because of the city government was known to be corrupt, and the police department had a stigma of not being on the up and up. It was like shoveling sand against the tide.
You'd hear over and over again that the Compton cops run the payrolls of the gangs. Initially, when
it goes back to what happened down here.
Working for
we got the corruption shit happening.
But he also when
that's involving the LP officers and fucking motherfucking drug dealers.
And one of the things that the former mayor of Compton, Mark Bradley, told us was that there actually wasn't a difference between death row records in the city of Compton.
They've always been the
same. Death row records tied to the city of Compton. Compton officials, city attorney, city manager, city police lieutenant, city police officer, city police chief, Snoop Dogg, Death row scout, Death row security heads, Death row security head again, and Death row recording artist.
His daughter got $1 million contract with them.
They reached out to the Los Angeles County sheriffs to see if the sheriffs would be interested in policing Compton. In police work, in law enforcement, there is so much duplication of services. They overlap, and a lot of times eliminating a police department really doesn't harm the public because another department can come in and take care of it. The way this actually worked was
SWAT swoops
the FBI walked into
Compton men suspected in shooting of officer.
because a Long Beach police officer had been shot with a gun that had flowed through the Compton police evidence locker.
Long Beach cop gets killed.
The FBI wanted to know if Omar Bradley was in on it.
Oh, and no. They got the deposition of Reggie Wright Jr.
And that led to an investigation into the Compton corruption.
Ex-Compton police officer.
They come in and they find
Compton corruption report. There was dope everywhere. There had not been an inventory of the boat for at least 10 years. If ever.
Chief Ori Taylor is suspended.
A group of those cops, an elite group of those cops were doing.
It says that's home.
Like a criminal gang.
It says that's home after his locker got cut the fuck open.
We're talking about
and the drugs get found.
Unaccounted for visits.
172 unexplained visits to the boat of Chief Ori Taylor. Compton corruption report.
Ori Taylor is pacing back and forth. Oh, I don't think I have a key, and I don't think the key's around. And he seems like he's nervous and he's upset. And so the investigator pulls out bolt cutters and just cuts off the lock to Ori Taylor's locker. And inside they find 2 kilos of cocaine in the police chief's personal locker. And Ori Taylor
cut the lock open, they found the drugs.
He doesn't want to be there, and he leaves the police station.
And Ori Taylor gestures to his attorney as he's running up the back stairs.
He's gone.
To follow him
Ori
up there.
Taylor's gone. He's out. He's history.
Cases were being rejected by the DA's
was a
office,
DA reject,
and the Compton police were actually keeping the evidence.
The 60
kilos a lot of that
were
evidence
in
was
the
being
vault.
kept in the evidence locker, and then when they actually go to look for the evidence, it's missing. Compton was
it's
a very
possible to come after
city,
hours, remove property and leave, says Sergeant Mosley.
Were trafficking narcotics, using the
Shit's
evidence
missing from the vault
as their warehouse.
That's how they pay him.
I asked McConnell what check and balance systems were in place. Says Sergeant Reynolds. He said none.
So our money was good because our money's coming out of this business deal. But where's their money coming from?
He said it was basically an honor system. Says Sergeant Reynolds.
And the guns, 2,300 guns.
That's a cop that KPD have already put on blast. 140 gallons of PCP. $1,680,000. Street value is way too much higher than that.
If you take drug money and you go buy a car, you just laundered that money.
Yeah, that's money laundering.
If you go buy clothes, you just laundered that money.
That's money laundering too.
That's a small scale.
They started calling people in one at a time. Nobody was
it's nothing of my concern.
For what was happening.
Chief Taylor, after 2 or more kilos of cocaine are found in the locker he used.
They were also trafficking in stolen guns.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guns were going into the evidence locker and then finding their way over to a gun shop in Compton.
Compton gun shop was raided in 2007. 892 guns sold that were tied to evidence from crime scene from 1996 to what, 2000?
There's no coincidence that the Compton police corruption report happened at the exact same time that we had the Rampart scandal. And so you have this pattern that includes actually the DA's office in the missing cocaine, but nothing ever happens. And you have an assistant district attorney who refuses to prosecute Ori Taylor, but then turns around and is the one that was pursuing Omar Bradley the entire time Omar Bradley had his corruption trial, which was eventually overturned.
Then I heard a voice, barely a well whisper, say you're dead. Investigator Patterson.
Pursuing Omar Bradley.
Within 3 years after Omar Bradley is defeated as mayor and Eric Perridan takes over, fellow prosecutor Terry Bork presses charges against Omar Bradley for corruption as it applies to credit card charges. Yet when those same credit card charges that are made by Eric Perridan are presented to Terry Bork, with the question as to whether or not that's actually
Terry Bork's done
Terry
too.
Bork says that even if he found that those credit card charges were corruption, he would not prosecute Eric Perridan.
Terry Bork's done for.
Reggie Wright Sr. is in charge of narcotics.
And not aware of any written policy, says Compton Police missing narcotics report.
And Reggie Wright Sr. Immediately starts talking about how, you know, even though he's the man that's in charge and the responsibility
Reggie Wright Sr. says I did not involve him. I did not involve himself with the narcotic
so
shooter.
they really shouldn't be looking at him. They should be looking at the guy under him and the guy over him.
Captain Purdy upon
Reginald
Wright
to blame
Sr.
for the malfeasance that was going on in the department.
Now, it looks like the time in the Compton police report that Reggie Wright Sr. was actually in charge of both the narcotics and the gang units was about a year. But prior to that, he had been in charge of the
That's
gang.
going to be found.
And who deals the drugs? The gangs.
The Compton Police Corruption Report is a 95-page document. So when it was decided that they were going to shut down the Compton Police Department, a lawsuit was filed.
I got that right to go shut the Compton Police Department down.
Was that there was a handful of people in the Compton Police Department that were just not satisfied with the Compton Police Department being closed.
It was heard before a judge.
But the name is plaintiff, and the Compton PD lost their case against opting the end of the Compton.
The judge heard the case. They
lose the federal bill as well.
The judge allowed them to shut down the Compton Police Department.
Even though Omar Bradley had been successful in shutting down the corrupt Compton Police Department, what do you think was the first priority on Eric Paredes' agenda?
Restart the Compton Police Department.
Restarting the Compton PD.
Yeah.
The whole notion of I am my brother's keeper doesn't exist over here. This is dog eat dog.
So what you have here is a real dilemma for the Compton Police Department because it's sort of like a vice. On the one hand, you have the Operation Big Spender and the sheriffs and everybody that's surrounding the city of Compton being investigated for corruption as it relates to the drug trade.
Big
and on the other
Spender,
side of it, you have the
ongoing, new DA case against Death Row ongoing.
Coming down on Death Row Records and looking at Death Row Records for money laundering as it relates to drug sales. So where is in the middle? The Compton Police Department.
I was approached by the FBI and ATF about a year afterwards, while I was working with Death Row Records in regards to racketeering within Death Row Records, and also at that time, the mayor of Compton.
Kevin Hackey used to be Tupac's bodyguard.
The FBI at that time was following
an ATF agent.
Reggie showed the homeboys. And that's
he's a federal agent. One of those times.
He really was.
Tupac Shakur joined Death Row Records.
At 24, Tupac Shakur was a platinum-selling artist, a movie star, and an inmate at the Dannemora jail in upstate New York.
And by the time that Tupac Shakur had gone to prison, he had already shot two cops in the city of Atlanta.
Accused cop killer Tupac Shakur.
Him, but he'd still shot cops. So he was no favorite with law enforcement.
That's just plain out period. Don't come to jail.
There's some more Tupac.
Straight up. This ain't the spot. It's dirty. It's filthy. It's like
you work for Death Row.
This is not the spot. No man don't want to be here. No man or woman wants to be here.
Pac is now in Dannemora. Everybody's visiting him back and forth.
Before the Rikers, after the Rikers, Dannemora, after Dannemora. I mean, I visited him. I took a trip. One day I was like, I gotta go to New York and see Pac.
And I think also that Tupac got it in his mind that he needed someone to protect him. Now,
in October 1995, David Kenner and Suge Knight arrived
he needed someone to
take Shakur to LA.
Watani had a group of people.
Watani is Charles Mann forward with Tupac.
The reason things happened,
right before Pac went back to prison.
If people put a group of people around you to look out for you, you need to stay inside that group. You don't need to step out and create new alliances with people that you don't know.
I got a phone call that Death Row had went to visit Tupac, and
Suge Knight did came and visit him.
The whole kind of Death Row thing is Tupac wanted to go to Death Row.
Suge wanted to visit Pac in jail.
Face to face, as close as we were sitting, because I want to go to Death Row because I want to record with Dre and Snoop. He said to me, "You can make the phone call,
to record with them,
or I'll have someone make the phone call."
Tupac's contract with Death Row shown here.
And I think Watani and I were both there at Dannemora talking to him at the time, and told him, "You don't need to do that.
Tupac's California cases at that time were none.
You're number one on the charts. Your record's outselling anybody at this particular time."
This was September 16, 1995. That's what contract was signed.
You don't need to go to Death Row.
Toilet paper or some napkins.
Because I knew he was going to end it. This was just a means. He had to get out of jail. And he wanted to
some toilet paper or some napkins.
And he would do those 3 albums. And after those 3 albums were done, the house is paid for. What is he going to do? Because he had other ambitions.
At the time, Suge wasn't letting anyone work with Dre or Snoop unless they were part of Death Row.
Didn't want to.
In those months, in those last 9 months of his life, he had the kind of desperation that I talked about earlier. The only thing that mattered was to make a difference.
Thug life is like the 12th grade. Some people graduate from high school and don't seek to do anything else.
His lifestyle on video and on tape and even on song looked like a party. It wasn't a party. It wasn't a gangster party. It wasn't a party at all.
You have to remember, Tupac was out on bail. And the reason that he was rushing to get as many songs done as he could was because he wasn't sure that bail wouldn't be revoked at some point, and then he'd be actually go back to prison.
Months before Knights got involved.
A gangster. Not one day in his life, not even the day in the MGM when he stomped whoever the hell that was on the floor.
Over the next 280 days, Shakur records over 200 songs for future use and plans to leave Death Row Records.
I was in a limo, me and Tupac, Outlaw Mortals. We were driving around
another one of Tupac Shakur's bodyguards.
And the radio came on with Snoop Dogg saying that he had no beef with New York, which sent Pac into a rage.
And at that time, the artist, the height
that's Snoop
of
Dogg.
that whole forefront was Snoop.
He is the LBC.
How the fuck did that feel?
Cause I am the LBC. I'm the king of Long Beach, nigga.
Long Beach
I made it
Crips.
fashionable for niggas to
Calvin Snoop Dogg brothers.
I made a universal motherfucker. I'm the nigga that took the set around the whole globe.
23-year-old Calvin Broadus, aka Snoop
turned himself in on September 3rd, 1993 after what happened in August 25th, 1993.
Los Angeles police announced that 21-year-old Calvin Broadus, better known as rap star Snoop Doggy Dogg, had turned himself into police on Friday along with two other young black men, all accompanied by an attorney in connection with the murder on August 25th of a man named Philip Waldemariam in what police believe was a gang-related shooting.
We, the jury in above and title action, finally defended Calvin Broadus.
1996, he was there. Calvin Broadus was found not guilty. Key evidence is case disappeared from the LAPD Pacific Division evidence locker.
Just doing it for the love, because I know that's how he is.
He was random charged on February 20th, 1996.
You know what I'm saying?
And Officer named Kevin Gates was there. He was like some spy guard.
You know, we beat a murder trial for him, but then he's on probation. Then he got caught with 2 ounces of marijuana. Then he got caught with guns. And each time it's nothing. They're not going to violate it. Because for the street guys,
this Snoop went with police chief back in 2016.
I mean, if you get a guy that
after Russell Poole died,
that's because he's an informant. So a snitch.
You know, it was Suge and this guy.
Danny Boy, another former Death Row Records artist.
Dre and the Dog Pound. That's how it was on the personal side. But you know, that was Pac, man. You cross him, there's no gray area.
Alexander, he used to be he used to be one of Tupac's bodyguards.
Screw up, you were out.
Now, he's not
Gangsta
around.
Party.
Everybody claims they was great friends.
2012, Tupac hologram at the Coachella.
Like Pac and Snoop at the end.
Pac hologram at Coachella for like 10 years later.
When Snoop did Dog Father, Pac was not on that one song. And Pac didn't like Dre. That would change the Death Row.
Tupac did not like Dr. Dre at all because Tupac called Dr. Dre out for what? For being gay?
He getting all the light, he getting all the attention.
I didn't feel nothing from nobody at first.
Go home from Shakur for a minute.
Snoop and Pac came up together. You know, Thug Life and Dog Pound, we like came up together. You know, Thug Life, murder was the case, and I get around at the same time we see each other, try to, you know what I mean, keep it moving.
Keep mashing.
That might have changed over time because that group of people hadn't been around Pac like we have. They didn't know how Pac is as a celebrity, as it started to actually
Pac had that celebrity status in him.
More attention, more time, because he's Pac.
And here's the irony. Tupac left to go to Death Row Records because he wanted to record with Snoop and with Dre. But when he got there, by the time he was done, he didn't like either of them.
The Campbell Quarters. This is how Lance Pierre. That's how Lance Pierre was talking about Pac.
Kick a hole in the wall.
Boom! Kick that hole, dog.
Kicked us out of Can-Am.
6 o'clock this morning. This is the best that Kevin Lewis could do for us. Picks up the phone, calls the office. He says Snoop was corny, take all day doing one song. He says, I'm paying Nate Dogg.
Pac does not like, that's not like this corny shit that Snoop is doing.
Studio so that Rage could
there's a studio session with Pac. It's June 10th, 1996, bro.
That's pretty
That's
fucked
after I
up.
got out of junior high.
I am paid for this. Why are you guys kicking them out the studio when my record is the number one record on Billboard? Stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
I think so.
So, that to me, was childish on their part, but they never feel true to Pac film. I walk in the door like the evil.
But in the city of New York on September 4th of 1996, there was a big problem.
Yeah, Pac and Snoop was already at the MTV Video Music Awards.
She asked me
that night.
Later, how do you feel about Puffy and Biggie? And I said what I felt. They're my homeboys. I love them.
Pac, of course, had
Shakur is attacked in New York studio.
New York because he got attacked in 1994, and there was a shot fired, and unfortunately, it was self-inflicted.
Snoop was basically saying, hey, I don't have a beef with them. That set Tupac off, and we immediately spun the limo around.
Pac's
and we went
pissed.
back to the hotel to confront Snoop. We couldn't find him, but we found Mr. Knight, and that's who Tupac confronted about what was going on the radio while we were in New York. I think Mr. Knight had me stay for the safety of Tupac, because I think Mr. Knight, with me not being there, he would have put his hands on him. He was that upset. And Pac's words were, I'm gonna cut out Machiavelli, and when I cut out Machiavelli, I'm the hell up out of here.
Bye-bye.
You got your money. I don't want nothing else to do with Death Row. I'm out.
And after the major fallout between Suge and Tupac, suddenly Snoop walks back to the hotel.
When I got back to the hotel, it was a whole nother atmosphere. Like
perpetuating this so it could be
There's Pac and Snoop Dogg in New York hours after the night altercation.
Don't look at me.
September 4th, 1996.
East Coast, West Coast war.
So when we got on the plane to go back to LA the next day, Suge didn't let none of my security ride with me.
No, Suge did not let him. Suge did not let him in.
Him, his homies, and Pac. And
Bloods.
The most uncomfortable ride I had in my life.
Tupac and Suge.
Put the blanket on my head.
In the plane.
Knife in my hand, fork in my hand, and just sleep the rest of the ride.
Sleep the rest of it, man. Sleep the rest of the ride, man.
So I walked down the steps. We meet right here.
He did this.
You going to Vegas?
Why was somebody that wasn't going to Vegas anyway asking Tupac, are you going to Vegas?
Pac did stuff like this. Yeah.
His way and he went my way.
Apparently, the Long Beach Crips had put out a DVD with a bunch of diss songs and some music videos.
Go to interview with Crooked Eye, man. You know.
DVD was all about killing.
Compton PD stated that there was a Crip problem.
Now, the DVD was predominantly Long Beach.
But Long Beach Crips were with Death Row.
You feel me? I'm from Long Beach. My whole time that I was on Death Row, right here in Long Beach.
You always saw
they may have misdirected the Crip problem away from Long Beach.
You always saw these niggas everywhere together. They was like big brother,
and
little
tested to the Southside Crips, Street Gang in Compton.
For the powers that be.
I remember them. Not the
remember that Compton government and Death Row were unified against the Southside Crips?
And then was our last days hanging out before he got killed. So we ended on a kind of foul note.
The tension between Death Row Records and the Long Beach Crips and the
Snoop Dogg backup group. Mainly Long Beach Crips, Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg. You got a little have there, Warren G, Dad Silver, Corrupt. Oh yeah, the late Nate Dogg too.
Total disrespect for Suge Knight.
Willie got checked. You know what I'm saying?
And then Snoop and Suge.
He's scared
of the video pimp slap.
Another way. Scared putting their lunch money up, hiding their gold chain.
That's the bully got checked.
In school, the bully got checked. He had to put his gold chain in to try to light a cigarette.
First we get rid of Suge Knight's number one staff finger.
Off like that because they were scared that Suge was going to do something to him for telling the truth.
Shit go haywire.
Go there, Stu.
You in Vegas?
By September 1986.
No, we heard about it because they was trying to get us to go to Vegas.
Crips and Death Row are a completely different franchise.
Fuck Death Row shit, really. You know what I'm saying? We was already saying. Who was already saying fuck Death Row?
Okay.
You know
that's around the magazine. That's one of the magazines.
And now we have
it appears that Snoop Dogg and almost all the Dogg Pound avoided Vegas.
The people who don't want to be seen in Las Vegas.
With possible exception of one.
Because I am the LBC. I'm the king of Long Beach, nigga.
This is my homie go half there. My homie out there right there.
I made a young
nigga can't say anything foul about Snoop Dogg in front of him.
Around the whole globe. Yeah, that's me.
Means and motive lead to opportunity.
Tupac hated people, and we were supposed to hate people because Tupac hated them.
In most law enforcement investigations, you find that the first suspects that are looked at are generally wives,
125 million. Life insurance.
People that would normally have a natural relationship.
That makes what the death row ownership and nightlife management.
Most logical
like
suspect.
Night dead.
And in this case, it doesn't seem to happen. Yet you're looking at she had plenty of motive.
Death row Dave Matthews knows.
Nightlife management, which Sharitha Knight
Rest in peace to Ron Gonzo Moore, bro. He was a collaborator. He was a musical collaborator with Tupac.
So he had that in his wife's name.
But he allowed Sharitha to make money of her own by managing the artists.
She also managed Caution. She managed us.
I think that he gave her the nightlife entertainment.
Simone Green, ex-Death Row Records photographer.
Did her experience, because she was young.
Anything goes down with Suge, you know who's going to run this company? Reggie.
Suge Knight owned 100% of Death Row.
Pressure Reggie can't handle. Let me tell you, if something goes wrong with Suge, who's going to run the company? Common sense, right? Sharitha was on the thing. Sharitha's on the paper.
They're tighter than you think.
Man, they're tighter than you think. They're tighter than you think.
Yep. He died. His wife Sharitha would inherit his entire ownership. Nightlife management was party to this $43,000 verdict against Death Row.
Edge over a few people. I knew what he did when we were outside Death Row Records, but as soon as Sharitha found out about it,
almost $1 million in child support.
He sent you home. You were done.
She says, "I'm not giving up child checks."
He didn't play that. It was like, I guess it was like, okay, either me or them, and I'm not giving up the child check.
She had a cheating husband. She had financial ties to him. She could definitely gain from him being dead. So in all of those circumstances, there might be good motive.
I mean, murder is pretty simple. The first person you go after is the spouse or the person closest to the victim.
Just changed his ego, his temper. The women started flocking the money, and that was basically the demise of our marriage. She got out of control.
Wow.
She went with the flow. It didn't bother her.
Simone
A lot of times she got herself into situations too.
Kevin Gaines too.
She said that.
Kevin Gaines too.
And trying to get
another LAPD officer got into a road rage incident with Frank Liga. He gets killed by Frank Liga.
We wondered if maybe Tupac was a threat to Sharitha.
When Tupac came in, the picture of Death Row, it all just crumbled.
It would have been easy for her to take over, but I don't think that she had the experience that was necessary to keep a multi-million-dollar record company running like that.
It wasn't.
You couldn't reach.
You can't keep it running like that. That's what she said. She can't keep it running like that no more.
She knew I had those. I basically knew about a relationship with Kevin Gaines, so it was.
She got herself into situations too.
How far in Kevin Gaines was it?
Said Simone Green, ex-Death Row Records photographer.
Was he really was he working for Suge too? And
Night employer, right junior contractor, bodyguard structure, Ken Archer, Snoop Dogg, Kevin Gaines.
The only time he was ever around.
Kevin Gaines was later killed by Frank Liga in a road rage incident.
Briefly for Suge Knight, just as
give it to Brian Bentley, a former LAPD officer who was already best friends with Kevin Gaines.
I was asked to work for Suge Knight, which I could
Brian Gaines worked for Death Row. LAPD officers were solicited. LAPD did work for Death Row for what, $75 an hour?
Gaines and she both got scared.
But according to the stories that roamed the halls of Death Row Records, Kevin Gaines was taken out to the middle of the desert as a warning.
Butt-ass naked.
To walk back to the city.
Because Suge was being very menacing, and she
naked, dog.
Backed him off by saying, "This man's a police officer. He's got a gun. And, you wouldn't dare kill a police officer."
According to FBI documents, Kevin Gaines was in Las Vegas from 2 days prior to the shooting of Shakur until 2 days after the death of Shakur.
I see shit in the dark.
So we know that Kevin Gaines already Snoop Dogg's bodyguard, and apparently
Kevin Gaines knows,
and that Kevin Gaines had a relationship with Sharitha Knight. So what exactly was Kevin Gaines doing out on that special assignment in Las Vegas?
She's with Sharita. The patent letter, an alternative suspect.
That was called, we call it the confession letter. Okay. That was given to us by Chris Blatchford of Fox News.
Black Hollywood
This letter was given to him in 1998.
James Lott Jr.
By a gentleman.
Chris Blatchford's picture.
Okay. But at the time, he was a confidential informant for Fox News for Chris Blatchford. Oh, wow. And it was reliable. He'd helped him actually tip him off to a couple of really big burglaries that had happened. Okay. CHP's offices got burglarized.
Even those white
he
boy.
helped Fox catch the people that did it. And this letter.
Dane Patton was well known to the Compton PD by white boy.
Okay. And the Patton brothers were Pyru.
Yes.
And
the gang in Los Angeles.
Yes, it was a gang in Los Angeles, I should say that.
Yeah.
That the Blood Gang.
Yeah.
And that they had
a Patton confession letter on.
Not only a confession that they were involved with the shootings, but why the shootings happened, what was all involved with it to begin with.
Yeah.
And in that letter, not only were the Pattons the ones who were alleged to have written the letter, but they named a rapper by the name of Little Half Dead. Okay. You have to be pretty hardcore, no dog pound, and no.
Those Little Half Dead, bro.
So his name came up.
That's Snoop's cousin.
Immediately,
that's family right there.
Because nobody ever heard of this before.
You don't need to look any further than the album cover that Little Half Dead did.
That album was like 10 years old. Dead serious.
Dead Tupac Shakur slumped over a console at Can-Am Studios, along with a picture of what arguably looks like
Yafu
Fula, the second victim right after the shooting,
Yafu Fula,
as a victim as well, being shot.
Little Half Dead album cover.
Little Half Dead
himself. But the piece wasn't reached. I reached my piece. I used to keep a heater.
Dog in my fleet. We was really on our fuck Death Row shit, really. You know what I'm saying? We was already saying fuck Death Row.
And the story goes that they owed Freeway Rick Ross some money. At that time, Fox News was paying a lot of money, and if they thought you could break the story that would get the kind of OJ ratings, you saw Tupac and Biggie, that kind of ratings back in 97, 98.
Yeah,
well, maybe it was worth giving this to.
Yes.
We've also heard that it was an insurance policy.
I was giving the hopes that LAPD would attend to kid the allegations.
You can give the press a letter, and if anything happens to me, you're free to put this out. There are several different points that the letter brings out, and we narrowed it down to 4 basic benchmarks that we could look at to see if there was any legitimate. The first one was demo stealing,
Tupac beating, Tupac, Rights Bounty, Right Jr.
There was a problem with demo stealing. There were a lot of people ripping off albums.
Yeah, I saw that all the time in the studio. Still see it to this day.
Tommy Doherty knows.
When people would
he used to be a Death Row Records sound engineer. He knew.
If it was a good track after they left, we might just make something.
After they left, they was chopping the same beat. Should that confirm this to Rolling Stone magazine?
From No Diggity.
After they left, everyone was chopping the same beat.
Death Row Security comes to the door and they've got the master tape of No Diggity as it got handed down the line to different producers. More and more stuff.
They try to turn that song into a fucking toss it up song.
That's in there.
That's like a complete reminder of the No Diggity song.
The reference to the fact that there was an altercation between Little Half Dead and Tupac's soldiers.
I think Pac was a great man, but his governor was broke. You know, in the car when you got your governor where you could only go a certain.
That's Pac in July '94, spin at reporters.
All out of nothing.
It got to the point where I had a bail bondsman on speed dial, and he knew me, and he knew our money was good. So anytime Tupac or any of the guys got in trouble, and usually it was Tupac, and then Man would have to get bailed out also, that I'd call and get them bailed out right away.
This is back in the days where we were using DATs. And I queued up the DAT to the wrong spot.
You queued up the DATs, Mo? Why, Mo? Why you queued up the DATs, nigga? Nigga, why you queued up the motherfucking DATs? Why fucking queued up the DATs, Mo? There's Tupac after he got the beef with the Hughes brothers and Spice One video shoot. Here's MTV Raps.
And I'm going like this.
And Al Hughes, what happened to Hughes brothers? He was a Men's Society director.
I'm getting ready to punch him, just like a movie. I get snatched off him, and then it's the bum rush.
Before that, he was directing. Him and Albert Hughes was directing few Tupac's videos. Mommy Calls, Trap, Brother Scott Baby. Half Dead was beaten down by Tupac soldiers. I think it was outlaws.
The third thing that the confession letter brings up is actually the fact that there was a bounty placed out on
Reggie Wright Jr. was
That's
involved.
There were bounties
that kind of Death Chain bounty story was grounded in some
there
truth.
was allegedly bounties put out on that. Crooked Eye talks about the fact
Death
that there
Row
was
chains
actually a
were
bounty
prized
that was put out. If you were a death row artist, you were marked for death.
Okay.
The fourth thing that we looked at, and this was the real jaw dropper, and that was that they mentioned Reggie Wright Jr. and his involvement in the fact that he was going to provide information as to where they were going to be and to provide barricades so that there was actually no way out.
Tupac thought he was
Club
going
662
to
using
a place where he
1996
could
map
have
data.
protection, but
6
both
different
Tupac
barricades.
and Suge were in over their heads, and they were both targeted for
6
execution
possible
that
right
night.
turn interception points. The route also accommodates leaving from the Luxor. Why would you have people mad at you when they're holding you freedom in their hands? Said Reggie Wright Jr. The patent letter double cross.
By this time, we know that Death Row Records and Ruthless Records had been funded with drug money, and that Death Row Records was the subject of a money laundering investigation. The operation of Death Row Records was the kind of organization that you'd want to keep things kind of quiet. Suge Knight started showing up on talk shows. He started showing up on magazines.
Yeah, BRE magazine.
And he started bringing a lot of attention to people.
That's from like 93, I think, like late April 93, I think.
In 1996,
that's like late
Death
April
Row
93.
Records is worth $500 million. There are a lot of people that are really upset with Suge Knight at the time. So if you're Reggie Wright Jr., it only makes sense that if something is worth $500 million and you're tired of being harassed by the guy who runs it, why not just kill him and take it from him?
Why not
Guns,
just kill him?
Drugs, jealousy, money. This is a really bad formula here.
Could have been. One more thing.
Keep Dad's back.
Back to Dad Stillinger.
Keep Dad's back. I'm like, fuck that shit. I could have jumped out on his ass in Vegas.
Oh.
It was killing me, but Snoop was like, hold on. Don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up. Fuck this up. Fuck this up. Fuck this up.
Yeah. Las Vegas, Nevada. That's where what really happened there. I think that was before Pac gets murdered. I think he was at the fight.
Reggie Wright asked me to ride with him to the meeting that we were having. It was about 12
George
noon.
Kalisis, bro.
And we were going to George Kalisis's office
with George
in Las
Kalisis.
Vegas. When we arrived there was 23
Reggie Wright told Reggie Wright's doing
security.
Reggie Wright's been warned by George Kalisis
at this meeting, along with
George Kalisis told Reggie like,
the
hey,
attorney and Reggie Wright.
Hey, tell your bodyguards don't even carry the weapons with you. Tell them leave them in the car.
We were not to carry our weapons.
Leave them in the car, they say.
That right away brought up the issue of why not.
I've been to Club 662 on many occasions, and never have they told me to leave my weapons.
So myself, Michael Moore, and Al Giddens was excluded from that because we were going to be the main security at the Club 662 that evening.
The feds they about to go shut Club 662 down if they got the feds showing up over there.
And I'm personally guarding Pop in one of the most hottest places to be.
We were told to leave our weapons originally into our hotel room. Okay, then we said, well, why would we leave them in a hotel room?
There was going to be a lot of commotion. There was going to be a lot of people. And what that's going to make it is a bodyguarding incident.
So at this point in time, all of the weapons were going to be at Club 662 left in our vehicles.
Yeah, leave the guns in the vehicles. Don't bring the weapons with you. Leave them in the cars.
To retrieve our weapons from our vehicles.
I got into a little argument with Reggie Wright.
Kevin Hackey was like basically hiding, so that's why it was only one guy.
And I said, Reggie, that part doesn't make sense.
That came from Reggie Wright to hiphop.com for like late 2000s.
I was Los Angeles County jail booking in a burglary suspect.
Kevin Hackey was primarily assigned to Compton Unified School District Police.
At the Luxor, security was all run together by
Matthews. There were 2 distinct meetings, one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
And we were told not to carry weapons. We were all armed.
We were told specifically do not carry your weapon.
And did you find that kind of strange? Yeah, everybody got to fight at the casino. Everybody thought it was strange. That why were guys told not to carry weapons? Even the cops that were there told not to carry weapons. Everybody was told not to carry weapons.
That's what we were told. Now, I, at the meeting, was asked one of the few questions. Why would you tell us not to carry our weapons?
This is their number one artist. I mean, he's as high profile as they get. Mm-hmm. You know, and you're paying for security. And you got all these guys at the club. Something's wrong. The piece of this whole situation just doesn't fit.
I think the reason they removed me from Tupac is because I was one of the few people that wouldn't buy into not carrying their weapon. And during no part of that day did I take my weapon off. And Mr. Wright
that gun carrying bullshit.
So they removed me off Tupac, so there wouldn't be a weapon
that gun carrying shit.
I rode with Reggie, and as we were riding,
gun carrying bullshit.
Driving, going over to the meeting, he began to tell me about how he was upset at Kevin Hackey because Kevin Hackey didn't come out to Las Vegas, and that Kevin Hackey had my Nextel two-way, cell phone radio.
Nextel two-way cell phone
should have been given to me when I arrived in Vegas.
Normally, Frank and I would both have radios, and Frank could just say, "Hey, Mike, I'm over here."
Oh, no,
there was no radio again that day. Frank doesn't have a radio. I don't have a radio, which I normally have, and we have confusion. So for most of the day, all this went on, and Tupac did not have a clue that's what we were doing.
Death Row was worth $500 million at that time, and Tupac Shakur most of that revenue. If your go-to excuse as the director of security for Death Row Records is that you can't afford an extra radio, and that's why you don't have enough radios to go around, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
When Reggie did that, and I questioned it, Reggie did something that he's never done. He's never stayed at 662.
That's all Reggie Wright Jr. does. Want to do is be at 662 club.
Then why would he need me there? And why would I be taking off Tupac?
The Orlando Baby Lane Anderson incident. Vegas refuses County PD help.
When I started working at Death Row, I used to work at Solar Records.
Go for it.
Running around, going buying lunch and picking lunch up and all of that stuff. But they groomed him into Suge Knight. The ladies would see from Suge is this nice side. And the nice side is making sure you didn't want for nothing.
You know, Suge, for a while, would send her roses all the time. Too many. Every time when she was here, you opened the door and there was some more flowers, for every occasion and sometimes every week. Initially, he would send her flowers. And when we were still in California, they initially kept the bills paid. See, we thought that was Pop's house.
Death Row House. Oh, Death Row House.
Death Row's house. That was not his house. It was not in his name. From the moment we got there, we thought that was Pop's house he was buying.
So he bought everybody a car for Christmas. But the catch on that, on the control,
the car wasn't even in the name. The car wasn't even Pac's name. The house wasn't even Tupac's name.
So if he got mad at you, he took your car.
He died in September, October.
I'm not letting nobody in.
State storage company and take all the stuff out of that house.
He had a side of him that is the sweetest pie, and then he has a side of him that he literally turns into the devil. Because he's so nice.
I don't know, but like I was like trying to see what's up with Auntie the other day. All of a sudden, Melvin keeps bugging me about. He want to stay with us. I told Melvin like, hey, no, I told Melvin like, no, Melvin, you ain't gonna stay with me. You know what I mean?
We were getting very close to wrapping on our gridlock. It was a joke, but
I mean, I'm not gonna let Melvin in. Not gonna let Melvin stay with us because I'm not even authorized to do that, man.
I got this phone call from Yasmin Fula. And she said, "Hey Frank, I'm coming down to a gridlock. Don't you and Kevin
it wasn't even cool,
talk
man.
to the two of you."
Wasn't cool, but that's why I'm not going for because I know Melvin's name and family to us anyway.
Death Row office.
Pac is called an audit on the death row office. You have to keep in mind it was a conflict of interest for Tupac to have the same attorney that Death Row had, being David Kenner. That speaks for itself right there. He wasn't feeling comfortable with what he was receiving, I guess, as far as his royalties or whatever.
So that's the completion of that obligation, as I know it. And I tell you, he had movie scripts, and he was truly interested in that. People were talking to him about it.
Yeah, he's done.
There's something going on. I don't know. I mean, there's something like Butch was like
meetings with attorneys
coming out with returning with Sheamus and Rich Holland, and all of a sudden, Butch had a match with Kofi, and all of a sudden, Butch has win back for some reason over Kofi, and all of a sudden, Butch was trying like high-fiving some of the people and shit. Damn, like all of a sudden he comes back to Sheamus and Rich Holland. All of a sudden he raised Sheamus and Rich's hands up, make sure they're the winners. That's just reality of it all. I think it was like that. I think it was like fights night.
Yeah, they hit you with like Suge Knight or anyone like that.
It was bad corruption going on WWE, man.
Bonds both for WWE. He didn't have no reason to kill him or anything like that. He had to go back to jail and humble him a bit.
Humble him a bit. Enter Baby Lane, aka Orlando Anderson.
According to Reggie Wright, if Tupac got out of line, we'll just throw him back in jail and humiliate him, humble him a little. Isn't that what they did to Kevin Gaines? Isn't that what they did to Snoop Dogg?
And Sullivan is down on his stomach. And that's it. It's over in the first round.
Tyson was Pac's homeboy, and to see Tyson in the ring doing his thing, whooping up on Bruce Sullivan. Pac was excited. He was jumping
the MGM Grand ticket for September 7, 1996.
Everybody, getting excited about a fight, and that continued from the seats into the back of the area where the boxers come back in at. After the fight is over, and he got back there and he's just going off.
CM Punk reacts WWE, making WWE for a job.
That was it. That was the excitement of that fight. That was Pac's excitement behind it. Mike Tyson never came in the back, so we never met up with Mike. We ended up leaving. As we left
be at least 30 minutes waiting for Tyson and longer if Tyson arrived. It was a well-known fact.
Casino area again. The rest of our entourage was out there waiting on us.
MGM match.
As we walked up to greet them,
Turbine Lane and other Death Row group at the food court.
All of Death Row entourage, along with Tupac's entourage. One of Suge's guys,
I just read some stuff from the documentary
and whispered in Tupac's right ear because I was standing on Tupac's left. Tupac took off and ran. His governor was broke. I took off behind him.
Yo, King was about to give him the time.
And the rest of the entourage is behind me.
Not want to go back to prison.
I've never been Rat Pack before. Wow. Tupac comes at this time, I didn't know who it was, now being Orlando Anderson, standing by this planter, just like waiting.
Why don't you just come out to what's that? That's the holding your freedom in your hand.
It was a setup.
Tupac had a big
That's why I never had no female friends around.
And Orlando Anderson swung back. At this time, Pac's medallion broke. When he reached down and grabbed the medallion, I grabbed him and got him out of the fight.
Was the medallion?
By the time the entourage who was behind me got there,
I seen little that videotape looks just like that one.
MGM, everyone sees. Orlando Anderson's on the ground and everybody's kicking at him.
Oh, Butcher was about to kick Orlando Anderson in the head or in the back.
I was in the MGM walking around earlier looking for everyone. I knew how to walk us out of the MGM to the entrance.
Everybody's running,
I walked us out of the entrance. As the tape shows, I'm in front, Pac and Suge, and everybody's following me.
It's a 7-minute
tape.
tape.
Meeting, there seems to be a divergence of stories. On one hand, some people say that Orlando Anderson left the MGM to go on and do other things. But witness Corey Edwards actually said that Orlando Anderson stayed at the bar. Corey Edwards was there with friends, as was Orlando Anderson. And if Orlando Anderson was in fact at that bar, according to Corey Edwards, you don't think the Las Vegas Police Department would have checked the closed circuit cameras at the MGM to find out whether that was
closed
true?
Circuits were there.
Well, Russell Poole said they did.
And Russell appeared to be injured or too upset. Frank Alexander knows.
After the fight that occurred at the MGM, when we got to the Luxor, the
Las Vegas Luxor
crowd
Hotel
was all outside, all of the groupies and everything. As I walked to the car with them, the first thought in my mind was, my weapon is in my car. My car is on the other side of the Luxor Hotel. I wasn't going to tell Tupac and tell Suge, wait 1 minute, I have to run over to my car and get my gun. Well, how come you didn't have your gun on you?
I ain't had no
Reggie told us not to.
access to other people's information.
We know that, man. See, man gets conflicting stories there because I told you that. I told y'all, hey, listen in the car. You carry that damn.
This is weird.
Exactly. There you go.
It ponders through me all the time. What if I could have done something? Then I would have really been the hero that Suge Knight once thought I was when Snoop Trailer got shot up. I've put myself in this position in my mind many times.
So Tupac Shakur was killed?
To say, what if I would have had my gun?
While I was working at 662, I heard something over the Nextels that we all carried for security. And what I heard was, got him.
Michael talks
Michael
about
Moore later told witnesses Wright Jr. ordered the radios turned off.
Well, he would have heard
That's right, and Reggie Wright Jr.
because he wouldn't have had a radio that night.
Then someone else
After Ghana was exclaimed,
said, hey, don't say nothing over the radio, which was the Nextels we were using radio to radio. And I just clearly heard somebody say, don't say that over the radio. But the person who said it was not Homeboy Security, nor was it one of our security guards. It was, to me, it would be like a stranger. Someone, and the person that said that was Caucasian. Definitely not African.
Oh no, even getting that, even we were in the cab and we heard, something happened. Tupac said it was like, over the radio.
There's a University Medical Center, man. There's a Hummer parked. I think MC Hammer just came out the Hummer.
Calling, I'm like, is everything okay? And
Coroner, man.
She calls us, no, go
Coroner
to the
van,
hospital.
man. Clark County, man.
And I also remember
Jimmy.
seeing, Suge roll by in the gurney with a little Band-Aid on his hand. And I was like, what happened?
They missed.
What's now? The hit on night fails. Hit on night fails. What's now?
All of the planning that they put into the operation, they shot tons of rounds into that car to the point where everybody thought that they were dead. But at the end of the day, they missed.
They missed.
After the shooting occurred on September 7th that evening.
Bro. They missed.
I don't understand something that occurred. Trayvon, after we were questioned by the homicide
I was telling everyone the same person they jumped at the MGM, Tim Brennan affidavit.
If he cared so much about Pac, why didn't he go to the hospital?
Why?
It didn't really seem to register on anybody's radar that it might have been an attempted assassination on Suge Knight.
Suge was at the hospital. Pac was at the hospital. How come everyone that supposedly had loved Pac, other than his family, the Outlaws?
This is about selling.
He did alone. He did alone. Chain Snatch, version 1. Gangsta do it.
They tried to
Person
sell the
2,
same
Tim
narrative
Brennan.
to Chuck Phillips at the Los Angeles
Make him
Times.
do it. Chuck Phillips, version 3.
They tried to sell the narrative through the
East
Wallace
Coast made him do
investigation
it.
and
Vincent,
the Wallace civil
version
suit
4.
through Wayman Anderson.
Sean Combs made him
And
do
then they
it.
tried
Caden,
the last
version
round
5.
to sell it through an ex-LAPD cop in a book called Murder Rap.
How come everybody didn't go to the hospital? What happened? I don't understand that.
So now we're in damage control mode.
Well,
Good Knight got shot at, and he
Kathy
lived.
Scott was already
Now
out
what
there at the
hell are we
hospital,
gonna do?
bro.
Because you've got somebody asking questions, and we don't have an answer.
I had Newsweek and Time. I had all of the majors, magazines, and newspapers coming to Club 662.
They got to make up a story. They got to come up with something.
Because after the fight, Tupac was going to entertain.
You have the attempted assassination of the head of arguably
the secondary crime scene, Law Flamenco, Las Vegas Boulevard.
Now, if this were
September
David Geffen or any other big record label
seen.
executive, there'd be cops falling all over themselves to try to investigate
That's
this.
September 7, 1996 murder.
It didn't seem to work that way.
So then I went and to see Tupac. They wouldn't let me close to Tupac, but they did let me see.
George Price, Papa G. Anybody
so
know
that's
him?
When Kenner came
he used to be a director of communications and a publicist for Death Row Records.
To the offices. He said, well, then you get on the next thing smoking. You know, here you need some money. I said, no, I got money. And go back to LA.
Get on the plane.
So Suge Knight goes back to Los Angeles and has a meeting at Death Row Records.
Back to LA. Get on the plane.
Should call the meeting. All the artists were instructed to come to this meeting, and certain security.
Suge Knight calls an emergency security meeting.
Prior to going into the meeting with Suge and all the artists from Death Row, Reggie met with us out front in his own meeting. But I'm going to add something to that. We were also instructed to lie by Reggie Wright to Suge.
But if I'm Suge Knight,
the only story they have is that everything started with a chain snatch.
They're shooting at me. I want to know who shot at me and why.
And the reason we
which
were
was still
to
not
lie
a straight story.
Was because Reggie Wright told us not to carry any weapons.
What do? They lie.
They lied.
So I have, by me just looking at what Reggie told me, I'm thinking that Mr. Knight was unaware.
More importantly, I want to know how far down this rabbit hole goes.
The meeting was basically about what happened, and the artists were drilling security about what methods we had used and what were some of our tactics.
And we know from looking at the statement that Suge Knight gave to the Las Vegas Police Department that he fully expected that Frank Alexander and every other bodyguard there was to carry their weapons. So whatever the case might have been,
Reggie Wright Jr., that idiot lawyer.
I looked around. And no one said it. No one was
George Calices.
So I'm Suge Knight, and I'm asking myself, who the hell is shooting at me and why? And who's the first person I'm going to ask? My head of security, Reggie Wright Jr. And
it looked like
head of security was blamed for it, bro.
Say that information to them.
Head of security was blamed for it. Go UMC in Las Vegas, Nevada.
The driver appeared to be hit with fragments.
Go to Greg McCurdy.
In the head area. At this time, the
Las Vegas Police Department / spokesperson.
Critical condition at this time. Homicide detectives are very busy right now.
Well, he has numerous injuries. He has multiple gunshot wounds to the chest, and so yes, that's always a possibility that a lung could be hit, a lung could collapse.
Go Dale
There could be other internal injuries that might need additional attention in the OR.
I think Dale Pugh was somewhere at I think it was at a parking garage. I think I remember him being at a parking garage.
I mean, obviously his pupils were open, but there was no movement there. I actually started crying. I mean, I was calm. I like the kid.
But Kevin Hackey gets into a scrape with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police when he reveals to them that he may be involved with the federal law enforcement agency.
I did work undercover for the FBI and ATF during my tenure with Death Row Records and Right Protective Services.
There was a report that was written by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department about the altercation with Kevin Hackey. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department wasn't concerned about anybody's safety, but they were more concerned about the public relations of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and strangely, the public relations of the Compton Police Department. Now, since Compton wasn't going to be involved in the case for several days later, why would the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department be so concerned about the public relations of the Compton Police Department if they weren't there yet?
A CEO of a company
retired OBMPD Detective Brent Becker for the Tupac Shakur case.
There was all kinds of alleged baggage involved.
This is where you begin to see Compton Police Department inject themselves into the middle of the Las Vegas investigation under the false pretense that it's a gang activity.
And again, that first night, I don't think he was totally forthcoming on everything he knew.
So they approached Frank Alexander to basically lie to the Vegas Police Department and tell them that a chain was actually snatched the day of the shooting, September 6th, earlier that morning. And that was the story that was concocted then. It happened that day. Nothing about the Lakewood Mall, and nothing about anything happening months earlier. It was all happening that day. And that's what they told Frank Alexander to tell the cops, and that's what Frank Alexander told the cops.
Every time I think it's over, they drag me right back in.
Call between Reggie Wright Jr. and Frank Alexander's subject. Right in
and later on,
when
Frank Alexander
the false
asked to
change
repeat
that
story
to indict Orlando Anderson. That was from the 7th tape.
One person went down to Vegas, me, you, and Malcolm, because Malcolm could ID the person. We're supposed to send you and him down to ID, to see if look at the pictures because they had a suspect. And that's when they had Orlando as a suspect, and then they were going to have y'all look at the pictures before then and see if maybe that, made your memory get better or whatever.
They did.
So you can describe somebody, but once you see a picture, oh yeah, that's him. And so that's what they were going to have you to do. And that's what they were told them, that we got 2 witnesses that, maybe we can help you out and put some things in the light. And plus the statement that you gave about the chain and all of that. With the additional information.
They did with the chains.
And when he refuses,
with the chains,
the story begins to evolve a little bit.
Greg
It doesn't become that the chain was snatched that day.
10 years
it
ago.
becomes that the chain was snatched several months earlier.
They were at the Lakewood Mall.
Security is a ex-Compton police officer.
Yeah.
It's suspected that you have Compton gang members who came up there to do a shooting, gangland-style shooting.
No support. They had no statements to what? Support this? Oh, that's 17 years later.
You have a lieutenant from Compton Police. This whole thing, it smells from high hell.
Hundreds of hours
to plan
of
B,
investigation
the narrative
on the narrative that said that this guy murdered this other person. That narrative came from the powers to be.
There's a Compton police officer by the name of Tim Brennan, who is a protege of Reggie Wright Sr. Well, Tim Brennan is the first one that comes up in this investigation with the entire concept that a gang was involved and that Orlando Anderson was actually the shooter. Tim Brennan and Bobby Ladd run around talking about what great guys Reggie Wright Sr. and Horry Taylor were. And of course, this is the same Reggie Wright Sr. that the Compton Police Department says is in charge of both the gangs and the drugs are disappearing from the evidence locker. And the same Horry Taylor, that's the one that has 2 keys of cocaine fall out of his locker when they investigate him after being suspended.
So obviously from a law enforcement agency looking into this, all of a sudden there's war in Compton. Basic calls were made, so quote unquote.
It says still the street gang war. It says Southside Crips.
Right. But from Las Vegas standpoint, the whole thing smells.
Tim Brennan lays the entire Orlando Anderson theory smack down in the middle of the investigation and uses a couple of confidential informants, and we have no idea of their reliability.
Oh, yeah. People, embellish in search warrants to get it, so they can get it. It's not, in my experience, it wasn't something that was widely done.
Also contacted another
but there were times that you'd hear about it was done.
But seriously, what are they going to do? They're going to try to blame somebody else. And who are they going to blame in a hurry? They're going to blame somebody that they can't point the finger on, somebody that can't be named individually. They're going to name some entity. They're going to name some group, some people, some gang. But at the end of the day, they're going to lie.
And they had to get a search warrant, and they couldn't come up with, the probable cause for it.
Yeah, Sugar Tupac were the first vehicle.
That's what Tim Brennan told me personally. He said, whenever they're ready, tell them that when they're ready to know who did it, who was in the car, and all that stuff. Tell them we have the evidence, we know who did it, we know exactly who was in that car that night.
Locations,
and he's basically saying that I don't want to start dissension between 2 different departments. But he said
it's funny because everything we had came from Tim Brennan.
You can't always take what they say 100% true, because you always have to look at a motive for somebody. Why are they saying why are they telling me what they're telling me? Do they have a motive?
You have to understand the absurdity of this. The entire narrative being manufactured is for a reason. You have to solicit a response from the judge. You have to get the judge to believe the story.
Is there some reason why they're doing this? Because, it may be something other than the truth.
If they had told the judge, hey, there's just some random arm that came out of a car, we really don't know who it is, and we really don't know who was responsible for it, and it may or may not have been related to a chain snatch earlier that day or 2 months earlier, and we're really not sure of that, there's not a very good likelihood that that judge is going to sign that search warrant.
They did sign the search warrant.
They don't like him, or they don't like the individual, or they got something against the individual, or somebody told them, I need you to pin this guy.
And no witness to the Tupac Shakur fight at the MGM said anything about Tupac saying anything, especially the line, "Are you from the South?"
Cops do it all the time.
That was intentionally added to the search warrant to give it a flavor of contradiction and to identify the South with the Southside Crips. And this was to make it appear gang motivated.
When a judge signs a search warrant, that judge is absolutely relying upon the representations made in the affidavit. And the affidavit has to be under oath.
It's important to understand that this kind of a false narrative emphasizes the fact that there was a fight and it made it Tupac versus the Southside Crips. So it set up the big fight.
The judge is relying upon the veracity and truthfulness of that police officer.
The statements made by Tim Brennan were not simply academic. They were actually made for an intended purpose and for a reason that judge would have to buy later.
And there are times, and I was a judge myself, where you get the call at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning from the drug enforcement officers that they want to come to your house and they have you sign a search warrant.
It's like when we served the search warrant on my undercover operation, the affidavit was this thick.
The affidavit says that somebody got out of the car and started talking shit. Well, that didn't happen. No witness ever said that happened.
Does not
and
look
if you really
well
go back to think about the amount of work that would have involved, it asks a whole lot more questions.
And you got to make darn sure as a judge that you're attentive, you're attuned to what they're doing, and you have some clarity.
Well, if all your facts are based upon the opinion or assumptions of other individuals and you have no confirmation of that by other witnesses, then you're going to go back and you're going to put your affidavit together and you say, I am swearing to these truths that were given to me. And these truths may not be truths. They're only opinions and assumptions.
For example, if someone got out of the passenger side of a stopped car and walked all the way around the front of that car or around the back of that car, talking shit and holding a gun, that the bodyguards would have reacted to that. But it didn't happen.
So the detective that is getting
How
the
did
information
Tim Brennan confirm the shooter got out of the car?
Or to have other evidentiary value to verify them as truths.
In my era, if I was caught lying, it would have been the end of my career. I would have been fired. They wouldn't have whitewashed. They would have fired me.
Each one of the statements made in Tim Brennan's affidavit that were incorrect were not made accidentally. They were made intentionally. And the reason that they were made intentionally was to alter the meaning of the search warrant. They altered the statement. It wasn't, are you from the South? Tupac said nothing like that. But if you alter it and you say, are you from the South? That's not just a simple mistake. That makes it personal, it makes it argumentative, and it makes it actionable.
They can't use you anymore because you've already lied on the record, and therefore you have no credibility anymore, so therefore they can't use you.
And it got to the point where Compton had to do something.
It began before dawn. The crime sweep involved 300 officers, 10 agencies, including the FBI, at more than 37 locations in the Compton, Linwood, and Long Beach areas.
Based on the affidavit and the search warrant of Tim Brennan, they go ahead and they do this big gang sweep.
During the affidavit, I chased him into a house. Tim Brennan himself
impersonally presented Orlando Anderson.
But who finds him?
Orlando Anderson's
Tim Brennan. So they haul Orlando Anderson in. Vegas police ask him a bunch of questions. And what do the Vegas police do? They walk away.
I just don't see the interest.
And Tim Brennan and the Compton PD can't figure out what the heck's going on. We're giving it to you on a silver platter, and you're just not buying it.
I've heard Manning before say that, well, we treat it like every other case, and he doesn't get the special treatment because he is a celebrity, but, I don't know if I buy all that.
There was an arrest made for the murder of Tupac Shakur. It was done by Tim Brennan to Orlando Anderson.
I know the people I need to talk to solve it.
So suddenly the rhetoric starts. Now Las Vegas is incompetent. Brent Becker's incompetent. Kevin Manning's incompetent. Everybody's incompetent.
The bullshit that everybody said that we didn't do anything, that's so out in left field, they're ridiculous. You know, and that's that. I had some problems between Las Vegas and me because they don't, you know,
always
like
have
what
with
I
Brent
said.
Becker and they always have with Brent Becker and Kevin Manning and all of them. Jeez.
In the Tim Brennan search warrant, there's mention of several gang members involved, and one of those gang members involved is a gang member by the name of Danny Patton, who also goes by the nickname of White Boy. During the service and the execution of this search warrant, many houses and residences that were involved with these gang members were searched,
given to
with the
Chris
notable
Blatchford.
exception of one,
Christopher Blatchford,
and that was
the guy
Danny
who
Patton,
did the report.
aka White Boy. It reminds me of the old statement, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to.
There are a lot of things that no one else knows about.
The Vegas Police Department knew exactly what was going on. It stunk to high heaven, and they didn't want any part of it. On the way out, Orlando Anderson says to Brent Becker, "Are you going to arrest me?" Brent Becker says, "Arrest you for what?"
Do I think we know who did it? Yeah.
And the further and harder that Compton pushed the matter, the further the Vegas police backed away, and the further that they didn't want anything to do with it.
They don't.
Right off the bat, we're wanting to talk to the guy that's in the car with Tupac Shakur, Suge Knight. And we're working right away with that. In fact, the night of the shooting, we tried to talk to him, but were refused access to him by members of death row, attorneys. And in fact, it took 3 days to get to talk to Suge Knight.
And here's where David Kenner comes into play. David Kenner was a former prosecutor that suddenly, for whatever reason, decided he wanted to start defending criminals, and he became a defense attorney. He was a very good defense attorney.
And we kept getting the runaround. Yeah, we'll get you in touch with him. Yes, we'll do this. Yes, we'll do that.
Who was giving you the runaround?
David Kenner's at the trial.
David Kenner's office.
It was actually an umbrella that covered a lot of the legal shenanigans that were going on at Death Row Records.
Understand that any shit can change tomorrow.
Compton PD had one more shot at trying to ruin Suge Knight, and that happened in the courtroom.
They was able to pull they scheme and their ideas off by me being in prison.
He had so many people.
They write Junior tip the police to get LAPD to detain Knight.
Motherfuckers can't wait.
They were armed.
For good.
Right there knew or should have known consorting with armed felons is a parole violation.
Two things that I always say, being from the
parole violation would have been happening.
They're going to take the money from
they
you.
Expected the LAPD immediately attempted to stop and detain Knight.
To take you for the money.
It's y'all motherfuckers that scared of him.
MC Hammer blocked the police from pulling the caravan over.
Death or in prison.
Yo, motherfuckers can't wait till he's just gone for good, so they can fully breathe a sigh of relief. I mean, I feel like they're not going to rest until Suge Knight is.
LA Superior Court Suge Knight parole violation hearing.
We're kicking Orlando.
I seen him standing right there helping. He was about the only one. He made the comment that Tupac and Knight beat him up pretty good.
And with that, Suge
Knight is sentenced to a total of 9 years in prison. LAPD at Death Row, the Kendrick Knox
So the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department weren't interested in Orlando Anderson as a suspect. Who were they interested in? I think the answer to that question comes in the form of logs and notes that were made by a police officer on the Los Angeles Police Department involving certain incidents that happened at Death Row's Can-Am Studios. That officer's name was Knox.
You're right that Knox is probably the most underrepresented character in the story because he was the very first guy to get on the
addresses local issues.
I can remember when talking to Sergio Robledo when they were trying to get subpoena Knox to, and he said, he's disappeared.
Stories.
I mean, the cops have given him a leave of absence. He's left the country. We've staked out his house. He's never home. He hasn't been home in we don't know how long.
That only happened.
We cannot get him the guy we most want.
That only happened there.
And we cannot locate him. He sort of stumbled into it. He was the senior lead officer, which is, it's an elite position, and there's just one at every LAPD station. He was responding to citizen complaints about activity at Death Row's
studios. People were upset that these gangbangers were parking in their driveways, and if they questioned them, they were being threatened with guns and that kind of thing. So he decided he should visit the studio, and the first day he arrives, he's back and forth with this guy who turns out to be Ramsey Lewis's son and turns into one of the best informants.
They all know the manager, bro. They know about
what
the managers.
Kenneth Knox observed may have actually driven Las Vegas in the direction of their investigation.
And the guy says, well, one of the people who sits here is one of your own guys.
They know.
And so he follows that.
White was vague in explaining
the
actual
he's
roles.
Finding out that there are a number of other LAPD officers working for Death Row Records, and that their higher ups that already know it. It's already been. He goes to his superior who says, "Yeah, we know that, but that's not going to be in any reports, and you're not going to." Make anything public about that. So Knox has pushed back a step, but he still is continuing with his investigation because he's got all these leads.
I pointed the presence of LAPD.
He's getting into the Tupac case.
They redacted everything too.
Evidence that there are cops. There were lots of cops.
They redacted all that shit too.
Present.
All that shit, they redacted it all.
Even on the scene when Tupac was killed.
Rafael Perez and David Mack's pictures.
They were, helping set it up.
The reason that you've never heard of Ken Knox were because the minute that Ken Knox turned in his reports, the LAPD understood the value of those reports and how damaging they might be. And those reports just disappeared.
Well, that was when he really knew. This is serious. He did
Knox investigation, detailed allegations.
And when he came back, he found that his computer had been completely erased. I mean, everything. It was blank. They shut him down.
They all blank.
They got him alone in a room and threatened him and told him his career was over. The one thing he did do was pass it on to Russ Poole. When I talked to him, it was clear, he'd made his, basically I've made my decision.
It's a three-way binder they used. They used it all.
Throwing my own life away. My family, hurting my family for what? To make cases against these gangbangers?
One other reason that the Tim Brennan affidavit tended to gain traction was because Tim Brennan falsely characterized a series of gang shootings that happened as a war that was in retaliation for the shooting of Tupac Shakur.
Our investigation revealed that some of the motivation for the shootings that occurred in Compton may be in retaliation for the events that transpired in Las Vegas.
And in fact, it was stated later that the shootings had nothing to do with the gang war. It's no secret that the Crips and the Bloods were hanging out together and were recording at Death Row Records. But what made it interesting was on the eve of Tim Brennan telling everybody that there was a gang war, 10 Los Angeles police officers showed up at Can-Am Studios to basically hoist a bunch of gang guys out of the studio. What they found was that Bloods were working with Crips at the studio, which was no secret, but that the Crips were East Coast Crips that came from New Jersey. West Coast Bloods working with East Coast Crips. Not much of a gang war there. But even more importantly, if the term East Coast Crips and Crips coming from New Jersey
East Coast
sound
Crips
familiar,
Bloods, man.
it may be because of something that happened just shortly after that.
Yafafua gets killed after that. Yafafua gets
there was
killed
criminal organizations,
a couple months after
officers working for the Gambino
Mop up the
family.
killing of witnesses.
Yafafula was a name that a lot of people have thrown back in our faces that we
Yaki
were
Gaddafi
doing things.
The secret brother of Tupac Shakur.
Yafafula gave a statement. People say we never interviewed him. He was interviewed. And the big thing is everybody says that he said he could identify the shooter. No, he did not. He never said that to us. He said he might be able to identify the driver. That is what he said.
That's a facial thing they go with.
And we tried to reach out to re-interview Yafafula. Well, next thing you know, we're getting notification from, I think it's in Orange, New Jersey, if I remember right, that he's been murdered in a housing project or something like that over some drugs. The problem was, it's a big country. People go wherever, we don't have tracking devices on. So we have to depend on people that we know we can get in touch with to try and reach out to them.
Johnson.
Immediately after the Yafafula shooting takes place, Compton police and Las Vegas police make it known publicly that the shooting has absolutely nothing to do with the death of Tupac Shakur. But that's not exactly true, because the FBI went back several years later and interviewed the New Jersey detectives that worked the Yapu Fula shooting, and they said that the Yapu Fula shooting was done execution style, in the style of the mob. The Compton police and death row records had two big problems. Number one, they still weren't able to convince the Vegas police that Orlando Anderson had anything to do with the murder.
Were apparently more interested
Reggie
in
Wright was having
LAPD
trouble
cops
trying to
working for
convince
death
Frank
row
Alexander to go
records.
back and repeat the same lie that he had told Vegas police earlier in the investigation about the chain snatch that occurred that day.
We were supposed to went down to Vegas, me, you, and Malcolm, and press the statement that you gave about the chain and all
They
of that.
play that too.
You know, with the additional information.
The LAPD had just come out of the Christopher Commission, which was started by the Rodney King beatings, and it had everything to do with police misconduct. So police misconduct was nothing new to the Los Angeles Police Department, but to also have it involving gangs and having it involve an agency that's dealing in drugs like death row would have made a serious black eye for the LAPD.
The LAPD was basically in cover-up mode, self-protection.
Kevin Gaines was in Las Vegas from 2 days prior to the shooting of Shakur until 2 days after the death of Shakur. So what are we going to do? We're going to galvanize this into the public mindset. We're going to make sure they don't forget the Southside Crips. We're going to make sure they don't forget Orlando Anderson. We're going to make sure they don't forget this is an East Coast, West Coast problem. And we're going to do it in such a way that it's big and outrageous and you will never forget it.
And Biggie Smalls gets killed. Then Biggie Smalls gets killed. And then Biggie Smalls gets killed. They make it permanent, the killing of Wallace. Biggie Smalls.
I'm standing outside of the Peterson Honda Museum beside
the location of the Wallace killing as it appears previously.
Christopher Wallace murder and the corresponding blame placed on Suge Knight as retaliation for the Orlando Anderson shooting moved light years towards legitimizing the cover story cooked up in September of '96. But in a missed move, the Los Angeles Police Department allowed a rogue felon
exactly the truth.
to tell his cellmate the details of how the Wallace killing actually went down.
Camp Wangdy, just
the LAPD tried to hide this inmate's testimony because they
credible testimony cleared these cops.
To exonerate at least 5 LAPD officers.
Coronado, Harper, Patel, and Rios.
What you're about to hear was worth $1.1 million to the LAPD
6 months in a prison cell with an inmate named Camp Wagner. There's Rafael Perez and the citizen. Rafael basketball was racketeering.
This is what they did not want you to hear, and served up by the very witness whose
that Camp Wagner speaks a $1 million story.
And I was in Linwood County Regional Facility from November 1999 to July.
Goodwood Correctional. The president Wolney has shared a cell there.
And then I could see the motive was patently obvious.
Yeah, Rampart crash, LAPD gang units. Rafael Ray Perez.
Could have gone to prison for the rest of his life.
He was facing jail time for racketeering.
Get out from under that.
Oh, he's stealing drugs for the LAPD evidence room.
Revenge.
Yeah, that's how he got. That's how Rafael Perez got convicted of.
Told him that they was finding out and getting them. So it was
allegedly $1 million for Wallace and Sean Combs.
I cheated on my employer, and I cheated on
President
all
Mack
of
was served by Ken Knox at Death Row Studios. Kevin Wright allegedly paid $250,000 down for both Combs and Wallace. No one has ever proven Knight gave the order.
They completely hidden Boagme, right? So clearly the LAPD took it at least that seriously that they would hide all mention of Boagme.
They'll get the black guy anyway.
In the case was the arrest of David Mack for a bank robbery out in Los Angeles.
David Mack was an LAPD officer. He was arrested for one of the biggest bank robberies in LA history.
Robbing a bank? That's near a school. That's robbing a bank. That was probably near University College.
The concept that LAPD cops were working for Death Row Records and were working for Suge Knight. And that's not true. Because long before David Mack ever robbed that bank, Ken Knox had logs that clearly spelled out who was working for Death Row Records. And those logs were published to Los Angeles Police Department's internal affairs in June of 1996, even before the Shakur shooting took place.
And they did a search warrant on his house.
They found the Impala too. They found the Impala
a black
too.
SS Impala, and that's the same vehicle that was
David Mack
used in
search warrant.
Killing of
3
Biggie
silencers
Smalls.
found in
There's
the
a number
house
of
owning
clues
a silencer a
that
felony.
connect
David
Cali,
Mack
possibly
unless
to the
LAPD
killing.
are authorized to use.
For the ride at the time, going to Death Row meetings with Reggie White.
Did the LAPD had used for officers with silencers?
They went and got a mirror in the job now. And Nick had already knew a mirror from being from the Nation of Islam, and they went to school together. He was already in the stand for the Nation of Islam.
So Amir Muhammad comes into the story.
A composite drawing of Amir Muhammad.
He identifies who this person is, but he basically was trying to cover up who he was. Well, that's suspicious, obviously. And then he looks at the driver's license and sees that the picture looks a lot like the composite drawing that was made of Biggie's shooter.
LA Police Detective Greg Cady came out and said that the reason that Amir Muhammad put a fake social security number on the inmate visitor application when he went to visit David Mack was because he did not want his identity stolen.
His explanation was that he was aware that inmates and other people would be able to view or access that log, and he didn't want his identity stolen. This hardly sounds like a professional killer.
What?
And he bought that as a culpable explanation. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you're putting
it is not clear where this was confused with a visitor's log. Amir Muhammad provided full data on a background check application.
Than just a social security number. If you're really that
the application goes to a background check company. Inmates does not see this.
You should use a fake date of birth. You should use a fake address. But he didn't.
Phony.
He used
fake information.
The only thing that he embellished was the social security number, and you'd ask a question, why?
The social security number is fake. The DOB is fake. The DOB might be true, but the driver's license and social security ain't even on there.
Muhammad in Orange County under yet another one of his assumed identities. This time he changed himself physically. He had a shaved head now. Didn't look like the Muslim with the fade haircut anymore. He had a shaved head and a beard. But anyway, he'd been arrested for menacing a couple. He was in an SUV. Menacing a couple in an SUV with a gun. He pulled out a gun. They pulled up alongside, pointed the gun at him, threatened him. The woman was somebody he'd been involved with, so it wasn't like this wasn't a hit per se. But they called the cops. They pulled him over.
They got him. They got him here anyway.
He had many aliases. His real name was Harry Billups. He never really, I don't think, legally changed it. I think he still is legally Harry Billups.
Billups was questioned by the LA Times, but never by the police.
Amir Muhammad was convicted of that case, but he was convicted on, I think that was a misdemeanor. Initially, it was a felony.
Why would a mortgage broker need to carry a concealed weapon?
A lot of the reason that he got off was that the couple,
CCW.
the only witnesses, a week
in
later,
that vehicle,
were found shot to death. It was ruled by the coroner a murder-suicide. The whole thing seemed dubious to me. This happened well after I wrote Labyrinth, and I found out about this. So I didn't follow it all the way. Somebody should.
I told you that this cat was coming to kill us or try to get at us that night. I told you I had intel.
The night that the notorious PID was killed, LAPD officer James helped to cut out.
Gaines allegedly failed to cut off Combs' car.
Both where Biggie was in the car and Sam PDD was in the car. So Gaines was supposed to cut both of those guys off.
I told our driver, Kenny, run this next 3 lights. Run the light, Kenny. Kenny ran the light. Big stopped at the light. Big get killed. Wasn't meant for him, bro.
The whole job didn't get
What was
done.
Kevin Gaines' internal affair business? His license plate reads IKSO. It says ITSOKIA.
So what exactly was Kevin Gaines doing out on that special
It says it's
assignment in Las
okay.
Vegas?
I'm with personal affairs. The Gaines license plate.
Red said that was the reason he was killed.
Boom.
It wasn't an accident.
Gaines gets shot by a Liga in a road rage incident.
No, we regret that he's loaded in the truck at the time.
Liga killed Gaines during a road rage problem.
alone in the truck at the time.
Okay, so gang shooting in Hollywood, California, late 90s.
Derwin and his buddy Kevin Gaines are best friends and running partners. That's how Gaines knew who I was. Basically.
17 years as a cop when the shooting was happening.
And I'd seen them one night in Hollywood. And
Threatened to
remember,
go to media with allegation Gaines' hit was a sanctioned LAPD hit.
I was going south, he was going north. He had another male black in the car with a
Never told detectives that he had seen Gaines prior to shooting.
We were saying hi to him and talking to him. Turns out Gaines was with him. They were running partner. That's how Gaines knew.
Right, Campbell saying Right Junior Kenner will not pay rest of botched shooting. Why is he botched the shooting? Why are they botching up the shooting? The sheer volume of information attests to the seriousness with which LAPD treated this information.
Have you had any conversations with Perez at all?
Also cool interrogation of Ethan Cohen, who worked with Perez at Rampart Division.
How about with Sammy Martin? Have you had discussions with Sam Martin over the phone or?
Perez stole drugs logged into LAPD evidence by Frank Liga. It was alleged payback for the Gaines shooting.
What's your feeling about him having a girlfriend that's a dope dealer?
Well, I think obviously that's true. There's a problem with that.
Okay, what's your feeling about him stealing 3 kilos of cocaine out of the streets and selling it or out of the property?
Right from the get-go, Texas police somehow
the case that FBI dropped.
Phil Carson was committed to this case. I mean, he had made a case. I mean, he was ready to make arrests. He was convinced that Mac and Muhammad and other LAPD officers had been involved in setting up Biggie's murder. He was all the way in on it. He was ready to file, but his superiors,
Phil Carson was with the FBI.
And eventually took him off it. And just like Kenneth Knox, he was right there, ready to make a case. He was told no. So Carson, basically just like Knox, to save his career, backed off.
They backed off. About face conflicting testimony. Go to Michael Robinson, a.k.a. Psycho.
The first and most significant informant in this case, long before Poole or anybody had heard of Amir Muhammad, Mike Robinson, he worked for the sheriffs mostly, and the sheriffs actually handed him over.
He had been paid he had been paid reliable informant.
And they said,
was it for 15 some years?
We've gotten
he been doing it for years, whatever.
Almost
he provided some. What is it happening?
At least we wouldn't have gotten.
He called him paranoid schizo.
Right away, the killer was somebody named Amir or Ashmir or something like that. That cases where I've had individuals confess to a crime, and I know you didn't do it. I know you didn't do it. Why are you telling me you did it? And I know you didn't do it. It's
it was a snitch.
It's because
his
their
face
brother did
and
something
head
to somebody
were
in a gang,
cut with a razor and his teeth knocked out. Terrified Robinson was drugged by the FBI at Amir Muhammad's house. Robinson was played for a fool by Muhammad. Mike Robinson died of a heart attack at the age of 49 years old. Handlers blamed the leaked testimony.
Time and time again, you have people who have information. They're put in a situation that's manufactured to make them look like nuts. Now suddenly they're not credible on the other side. They're not nutty about other things. Board of inquiries. They're not nutty about Iranians bringing in 60 kilos of cocaine. They're not nuts about any of these other things that are going on. They're cops in some cases.
So I met Wayman, and
I'm a paranoid schizophrenic. I lie about everything. I have every memory problems. An ordinary jailhouse informant. That's altered testimony.
I can tell you is that he never ever gave me any bad information, me or my partner.
One of the guys that was from Morella's law firm.
Statement of Wayman Swabby Anderson, a call recorded in 2016.
They would switch they had power to switch my case into another courtroom, which they did. I have it to prove it to you. Right after the deposition, the guy who did the deposition from Morella's law firm, I think that's how you pronounce it, the law firm.
Yeah, Morella.
Whatever they call it.
Morella, yeah.
They sent the deposition within 4 days to
it's all bullshit, desperation on Perry Sanders' part. And it will make him look even worse.
The deposition, when they were sending it to the LA Times to go to print with it, I contacted Perry Sanders it underneath threat and it was duress, and I would never sign it. I never ever.
Chuck Phillips was fired from the LA Times for writing a bogus story.
Trying to put words in my mouth about other articles.
That Orlando Anderson killed Tupac and was paid by Wallace to do so.
That came from Don Vincent's mouth.
Wow. LA City Attorney Don Vincent?
So this whole thing came from the city attorney. They had a hard-on against Perry Sanders, Mrs. Wallace, and Christopher's estate. They did not like Perry Sanders. They did not want to get over. They felt on the city of Los Angeles.
But suddenly, when it comes to matters of death row, or it comes to matters of Suge Knight, or it comes to matters of the Wallace investigation or LAPD corruption, these guys are bonkers now. Yeah. Anybody with half a brain can see what's going on.
What if they were truthful?
Let's suppose for a minute
call between
that we
LA
say these
Times
guys are nuts.
reporter
Let's
Chuck
say we
Phillips
take at face
and
value
witness Frank
what
Alexander.
these guys had to say before they were tampered with, before they were threatened, before Chuck Phillips got to them.
Probably going to write the story by the end of next week, and I just think that would be. If I want to be able to bring that up in the story, but it would be much better to bring it up if you were part of it. You know what I mean? If you just would say, hey, I would. I mean, you don't have to say I could identify the guy. All you have to say is I would go to a line. No, because they've not even done that, and they're trying to act like they have done it. You know what I mean? Or that there's no reason to do it. Yeah, that's a question I'm not going to answer, Jack. One way or another.
Before the LAPD got to them, before they had an opportunity to be dissuaded somehow.
We have been told numerous times by numerous people, including police officers, that they're afraid to come forward.
First, we have to look at what they said originally. Then we look at how they were tampered with.
Testimony. What the hell did they do to us? Fear blowback.
These people have reliable information. They had a track record of provable, reliable information. They get tampered with. Now, all of a sudden, they're afraid to talk. Their stories are changing. They're not right about certain facts that they had been absolutely concrete sure of before. And how does that not?
I don't know where Perry Sanders is going to go with
them. They wanted a gang expert.
Murder trap.
Because there was some gang
refreshing the narrative.
And I've been known and still am as a gang expert in the defense.
In 2011, the Anderson narrative resurfaced in a book written by an ex-cop named Greg Kading.
To work on it with you and be more than happy. So I
former Wallace detective Russell Poole said Kading had no credibility.
Got into it and found out that
this is why
I don't understand the gang issues. There's no real gang involvement in this.
C. Strong was the defense investigator for the case. USA versus George Toros Ramos. It was Greg Kading was the lead detective.
And so they're having discussion and testimony about, informants and things and Kading and all that. And he's up there and testifying went on. And then the defense calls me.
Toros was a popular local merchant. Market.
And I said, yeah, this is how you deal with informants. This is a department protocol.
That's the number one, sure. And, LAPD Detective Kading Wright was partner Darren Dupree.
There is now. And the judge turned over and asked me, he says, well, what is your assessment or how do you feel that Detective Kading handling of these informants? And I said, he sounded like he was totally out of control and totally out of policy to me, Your Honor. He did not follow the correct procedure. And he goes, okay. And then the judge told the U.S. attorney that I want to see the informant manual. Well, there isn't one, Your Honor. Kading's telling the federal prosecutor.
Was there in fact a confidential informant policy manual?
And he said, I want that manual in my office in 1 hour.
It was created in 2002 in response to Rafael Perez and the Rampart scandal.
In a real cross because he has testified that there is no such thing. And there was. But the federal prosecutor believed Kading that there wasn't anything, and there was. And then you saw exactly what I laid out as to how it's to be handled. Well, come to find out, and I listened to a lot of the tapes of him and his informants. Why he takes
all this all that got shown through 2008, all these audio recordings that came off like what?
Houses and money.
That's like
all these things.
That's like a 14-year-old tape that they got going on.
I have
phone conversations of the
reporter Chris Vocal never bothered to check
other
the fact
guys.
check
Yeah,
Katie.
I had to say this, and that. I'm $400,000. I'm going to get a $500,000 home.
He was never called to testify. Said Vocal and Wilson
doing it, bro, and all this. And I'm like, you can't promise people anything. You can't.
Court records confirmed Katie testified more than once.
Informants, you can't offer them anything for that. You have to tell them that I can't give you any. I have no authority to give you anything. I would
believe that. So you're going to get $500,000 if you testify like that.
This witness to deny until he's caught.
It was on tape. You didn't have to believe him. It was on tape. That's why I don't understand why he taped himself when he visited these guys alone. He never had a partner with him, and he never had a witness or anything, but he taped himself. He even taped himself on the phone, and I just
that happened a couple of times.
Understand the mentality of someone that's a seasoned officer or detective that he knows they're taping.
Double crossing is the word for
my
double crossing.
My understanding is that when the case was, almost all the charges were dismissed. There were some minor.
Yep, Katie was reassigned to the Wallace case. Houston's relationship with the federal prosecutor on Torres case that squeezed Lando Anderson's uncle to give testimony to support Anderson meth.
Some housekeeping and
that's where it came from.
Things or something.
You see me at the same tactics exposed in the Torres case. King Mill received recordings of Davis's recession that were unauthorized by the feds, especially the FBI.
Informed Katie that I don't ever want to know or see or hear of you being in the federal court building, or you're never allowed
to get Davis to talk. It was a promise of waiver of prosecution to trap Tammy Hawkins to try to frame Suge Knight. Katie made up phony documents and lied to Hawkins.
Know, what had transpired here.
You were around when they said that.
Yeah,
you were there.
They did that.
Yeah, and so that's all I know. And I never saw or heard of Katie again.
Right.
I've seen this with other
recordings were revealed.
LAPD,
no violation of policy were discovered. Was it discovered? The LAPD whitewashed internal affairs report.
And the judge whitewashed it.
The content of the tapes was not an issue.
Really lying. And then when it gets back to the department, they slap their hand like, well, you can't be in homicide for 3 or 4 weeks.
That's what all they got from that content.
Nothing.
Conversations which the government did not know existed.
Public entity, they don't want to take a hit in public that puts the reputation or anything of the department down.
It's always this way, man. I had to come up with the answers to tell you.
They don't want to
and then you just say, yeah, you're right. That came from Grady Katie's tape statement to our president.
To where, in my era, if I was caught lying on the witness stand, it would have been the end of my career. I would have been fired.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have whitewashed. They would have fired me.
Yeah.
Because
the defense never intended to have me testify. In fact, it was imperative to keep me off the stand. Greg Katie murder rap page.
On any case
he was put on the witness stand and questioned by the defense. That's from July 18th of 2009.
Because you already lied on the record in a courtroom.
I want to ask you about these logs that you mentioned, Detective Katie, court documents.
It seemed like nobody cared.
You have to understand that Greg Kading admitted in 2011, and several years after he was off the police department, that he personally had not seen any of the evidence that had been presented.
As of 10/5/2011, Kading admits not seeing key evidence.
Lawsuit? The entire nature of the Wallace lawsuit was that cops were involved, and that David Mack was involved, and that Rafael Perez was involved, and that Amir Muhammad was involved.
So saying that, we have no problem there.
That was the entire scope of the Wallace investigation. So if you're a detective and you've seen nothing that puts forward any new evidence or any new information to support that theory, how in the world can you say you've actually investigated it at all?
Why?
If you do not include box B along with box A, and explain everything in those boxes. Of course, you're an incompetent investigator, 1. 2, you're a fraudulent investigator.
In those.
And you've just disgraced the law enforcement code of ethics.
Yeah.
Greg Kading and some other people
was cool, and RJ Bond took the patent letter to the LAPD.
Immediately saying, "Oh, how ridiculous!"
LAPD.
Oh, here goes RJ Bond again. But again,
Deputy Chief in Police Albanese and RJ Bond at that meeting. Protect the Anderson narrative. LAPD officers leaked the letter.
And the evidence
they leaked the letter in.
That could refute and change everything. So your investigation is not complete.
I've talked to the U.S. attorneys out here that had that caving case, and he's like, his name is Mud.
Bye-bye. There's a helicopter.
It turns out a few months after the Biggie Smalls killing,
helicopter, folks,
that there was actually
Compton helicopter sale months after Shakur and Wallace killings.
Auction.
Suddenly, engine repair is more than value. Helicopter declared surplus. Vegas is already a sealed
One of the bidders on this
no other paperwork
bid,
or bids or evidence.
Was the city of Las Vegas. Vegas has to be told to shut up. They have to be hushed. Because
it's a huge Douglas MD-500E
they're not going to be able to
helicopter.
basically contain what they believe to be the truth about it. And I think that was always the veiled threat. Hey, you push us too hard.
Without Douglas 500E, helicopter is a military grade fancy tank aircraft. It was used by the CIA and the American Corporation.
And if you really wanted to go in that direction, we can push it that way. That's when Compton said, well, let's change our
helicopter sale months after Shakur Wallace killing. Suddenly, engine. I read those shits already, bro. Please, I read already.
Something nice. What if we treat you good? Why don't we give you something that you can turn around and flip and make a little bit of a profit on? The city council just knew that the helicopters were to be declared surplus. The city council has no idea what helicopters do, and they're not in the helicopter business, so they wouldn't know how much these helicopters were worth. And so if you're going to give them away to Vegas, give them away to Vegas. Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Get the helicopter.
And when the Vegas fell to
Bradley.
the night of that meeting, I'm getting the city of Las Vegas budget is damn near $1
million,
billion a year.
$12 million for the budget?
And we sell it.
$5 million for the budget? $500 million for the budget?
Jet helicopter cost $1 million.
And you're talking about a helicopter? Give me a break.
From the looks of it, it doesn't appear that transaction was actually sanctioned in any kind of a city council or budget meeting in the city of Las Vegas.
The helicopter sale.
So that's what we're doing.
So
Vegas police informed us they have their own internal committee that approves purchases.
If there was an exchange of a helicopter from Compton PD to LVM PD, you're never going to find it.
They're not finding records. Vegas PD has them all.
Those documents are destroyed, and that tracking of that money is just about as hard to track that money as it is to the police radio system money. It's non-existent anymore.
It's bought, it stays off the books, and no one has any idea that this helicopter was purchased.
So we hear that they got this brand spanking new $50,000 helicopter engine.
Yeah.
And
they
don't read the instruction manual, and they burn it up right there on the pad.
So they burn the instructions, man.
$50,000 right out the door.
What's the right around for $1 million insurance claim?
I'm just wondering if there was some kind of connection.
The final darts.
This wasn't a grand conspiracy, but rather a few individuals that were very good at gaming the system. After Tupac was dead, and having missed their opportunity to kill Suge Knight, the conspirators put him in prison so they could rape and plunder Death Row Records. They were able to sell most of their crimes, leading up to the murders, as a gang thing that was unsolvable. When the narrative didn't gain traction, they elevated the narrative by killing Biggie as an East Coast-West Coast feud that was equally unsolvable. They sold this narrative through Tim Brennan's affidavit. Then they sold it through Chuck Phillips' LA Times articles. As the truth began to emerge in Biggie and Tupac and the Wallace civil trials, they suppressed the truth in the first trial and used Wayman Anderson to sell the narrative and derail the second trial.
Oh, yeah.
To galvanize this narrative, they used an ex-LAPD cop to sell it yet again. They'll do anything to obfuscate the truth and sell you this murder as unsolvable, in spite of hundreds of witnesses in very public places, because they are still gaming the system.
I don't take any criticism of the Los Angeles Police Department or any criticism against law enforcement lightly, because my family was a family of cops. My grandfather was on the Los Angeles Police Department. My father was on the Los Angeles Police Department. I knew cops every day. And it makes me sad to think that these people that are involved in these crimes have sullied the reputation of great men and women that are out there, because there are a lot of them out there.
The only way police misconduct can occur as if it is condoned and tolerated by upper police management. That's it. That's the bottom line.
There were no convictions as a result of the Compton PD investigation. There were no convictions for the Tupac Shakur killing.
Russell Poole died of a heart
attack. There were no convictions for the Biggie.
He was at the Illy Sheriff's discussing
there
our
were
new
no
leads.
Convictions for the acts of very bad people. And now the lack of conviction and the lack
Frank
of
Alexander died from an alleged suicide, a
really
gunshot to the head.
Are being used as a rationalization and a
90 days later, decorated firefighter Michael Moore's death is also ruled a suicide.
Is that Al Capone was never charged with murder. Al Capone was charged with tax evasion. Did it mean there weren't people that were dead as a result of Al Capone? Yeah, there were. But he was never charged with murder.
That's a good day for me. The first Michael Moore, then Frank Alexander, and now Russell Poole.
Well, I didn't get caught, so it must be okay.
Russell Poole said
that we have a long way to go.
Do it the right way. Reduce to 3 words, be high-minded. 3 more words, remain high-minded. That's the message.
That's the final cut of this film. The Compton government may again be trying to resurrect the Compton Police Department.
Do I do the right thing today, or do I go off the path? And do I become corrupt today?
Now you know why. The end. See you in the next. Gibbs. Well, that's it for Tupac Assassination, Battle for Compton documentary. Memorandum of Notorious B.I.G., Tupac Shakur, Finn Shakur, Russell Poole, Michael Moore, Frank Alexander, and Kevin Hackey. So that's it for the for this that's why I had to go do this live. That's why I do this live stream to play that documentary. Well, I don't even have to get copyright struck for that bullshit. So hey, guys, hey, see you on the next one. So stay safe out there. And I'm at the end this thing. Hold on. I'm at the end this thing. Before I have to go jump back to watch that video that JD from NY 206 is doing 6 years ago with the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 game. I think it was Black Ops 2 or 3. I'm gonna jump back to JD's rant on the Call of Duty franchise. So see you next one tomorrow. So stay safe. Stay safe, people.